Salutations, digital traveler. Are you tuning in from a majestic metropolis or a humble hamlet where even the goats get Wi-Fi? Declare your coordinates below. And if you've got friends, family, or just nosy neighbors, send them this video. Sharing is caring, or at least mildly entertaining. Engage. I once prided myself on building systems no one could infiltrate. As a senior network engineer in Nebraska City, my daily grind was defined by firewalls, intrusion alerts, and relentless vigilance over sensitive data. That mindset didn't end at the office. It followed me through the front door every night. Our home became a miniature fortress. Smart locks on every entrance, encrypted backups humming quietly in the background, layers of security most corporations would envy. The bitter irony? I fortified everything except the one thing that truly mattered: my marriage. Long before I was the IT guy, I was Erin's husband. That role came first. My faith in her wasn't something I measured in codes or two-factor prompts. It was instinctive, unquestioning. We met in college, both fresh out of the University of Nebraska, carrying the kind of optimism only youth affords. I can still conjure the memory of her laugh echoing beneath the oaks in Arbor Lodge Park on our wedding day, sunlight filtering through her hair until it looked spun from gold. Nebraska City is barely more than a pinpoint on a map, just over 7,000 people, but it was perfect for us. Life there moved slower, stitched together by red brick storefronts and quiet, tree-lined streets where neighbors still knew each other's names. Not long after the wedding, we bought a modest two-story near downtown. We imagined it would see everything: children playing in the yard, birthdays, anniversaries, the quiet years we'd grow old together. That first spring, we planted a sapling in the backyard, a tiny marker of the life we were starting in a town famed for its apple orchards and Arbor Day celebrations. Most of my work was remote. From a converted attic office, I managed the network systems for a regional bank. 3 monitors framed my desk like a command station. A custom-built server purred in the corner. Routers blinked in neat rows like distant stars. Erin used to joke I'd turned our house into NASA mission control. I always countered that the setup wasn't just for me. It kept her and our son safe. Still, I can't deny I loved the sense of control it gave me. Voice-activated lights, security cameras covering every angle, door sensors feeding data into my home server. This was my domain, a sanctuary of order and logic. Erin was the warmth that kept it all from feeling sterile. She had a gift for connecting with people that I never quite mastered. As office manager for a local logistics firm, she'd come home brimming with stories: quirky co-workers, supply chain fiascos, random office dramas that colored our dinner conversations. Where I clung to structure, she thrived on spontaneity. She teased me for my obsessions, like the time I barcoded our pantry containers for inventory management. Her laughter was never cruel. It was light, affectionate, infectious. She softened me in ways I didn't fully appreciate until much later. We had an 8-year-old son, Evan, my anchor, my greatest pride. After long days troubleshooting networks, nothing grounded me more than coaching his soccer team or helping him with science projects at the kitchen table. Erin was always there at the games, cheering louder than anyone, flashing me that smile every time our team scored, a silent reassurance that we were doing something right. Parenting felt like a rhythm we'd perfected. I handled the tech repairs, fixing Evan's tablet, building rockets for school fairs. Erin handled the heart, organizing birthdays, knowing which snacks every kid liked, volunteering for school events. We balanced each other. At least I thought we did. Looking back, the cracks were there, subtle but present. I ignored them, trusting the life we'd built. Take Erin's phone, for instance. Lately, it was always in her hand. Sometimes I'd walk into a room and see her tuck it away, flipping the screen down with practiced speed. When I asked if everything was all right, she'd give me that easy smile. Just work stuff. Don't worry about it. And I didn't. She had her routines, late nights at the office, occasional outings with coworkers. Nebraska City may be small, but downtown has its charms. A cozy winery bistro, a craft beer pub they all seem to love. On certain evenings, she'd come home smelling faintly of wine and something floral I couldn't quite name. I'd tease her about becoming sophisticated. She'd laugh, kiss me on the cheek, and disappear into the shower. Those nights, she seemed quieter, more tired. I chalked it up to long hours and never pressed further. She still left me little gestures of love, a heart doodled on my lunch napkin, a random midday text. How's my tech wizard today? Those moments felt real enough. I had no reason to suspect a storm gathering on the horizon. Life had a comfortable rhythm, patterns that felt immutable. Saturday mornings meant pancakes, followed by Evan's soccer games or family errands. Sundays were reserved for visiting relatives. Both sides lived within an hour's drive. We were active in church, plugged into the community. From the outside, we looked picture perfect. Friends would joke we were the modern-day Brady Bunch, just with fewer kids. I wore that comparison like a badge of honor. I once believed the life I'd built was indestructible, rooted firmly in love and the world of technology I understood so well. Perhaps that certainty had made me careless, too assured in the endurance of what we'd created together. In cybersecurity, the most catastrophic breaches rarely come from glaring weaknesses. They emerge from the smallest lapse, the oversight so insignificant it's easy to miss. A single neglected line of code can dismantle an entire framework. What I didn't realize then was how much that mirrored human connection. What began as an imperceptible crack in our life together, a faint intuition I ignored, would soon widen into something impossible to deny. The cruelest irony was this. I could identify digital threats in seconds, yet I remained blind to the danger lying closest to me. I had every means to uncover secrets, but never imagined needing to use them on the person I trusted most. I thought I was anchored, steady in routine, grounded by faith in us. But those anchors were already loosening, and when they finally slipped, I would no longer recognize the version of myself left behind. Chapter 2: The Discovery. It started with something so minor I nearly overlooked it, a trivial detail, a faint digital breadcrumb that should have meant nothing. One evening, while going through my usual ritual of paying bills and checking account activity, I logged into our cell phone plan to confirm the autopay had cleared. Part of my habit involved scanning the call logs, not because I suspected anything, but simply to make sure there were no unusual charges. That's when I noticed it, a single number appearing over and over on Erin's line. It wasn't stored in her contacts, just 10 unremarkable digits. Most calls occurred around midday, which seemed harmless enough. But a handful happened late at night, close to 11. On evenings she'd said she was with friends, or once, finishing paperwork at the office. I tried to replay those nights in my head, remembering how I'd tucked Evan into bed alone more than once. At first I dismissed it. It could have been Kayla, the co-worker she often mentioned having girls' nights with. Or maybe it was work-related. Erin's role as office manager sometimes pulled her into after-hours emergencies. Still, the thought nagged at me like a splinter I couldn't dislodge. Curiosity finally got the better of me. I entered the number into a search engine. The result was unhelpful. A vague listing labeling it as a local cell. I almost dropped it right then. Digging into her calls felt invasive, wrong. I closed the browser, convincing myself I was overthinking. But the doubt refused to die. Over the following weeks, I found myself noticing small details I'd once overlooked. One evening, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while we cleared the table. I reached to hand it to her, and she darted forward, snatching it with a tight smile. "Sorry, work stuff, confidential," she said quickly. I nodded, pretending it didn't matter, though my heart thudded harder. Confidential work texts at 9 p.m. on a Saturday? Another night I woke around 2 to get water. A faint glow leaked into the hallway. I followed it to the living room and found Erin curled on the couch, whispering into her phone. I only caught fragments. "Miss you too," before I made an accidental sound. She ended the call instantly. When I stepped in, bleary-eyed, she forced a startled laugh. "Couldn't sleep," she said softly. "Kayla's having a rough time with her relationship. Just needed someone to talk to." She kissed me lightly on the cheek, like punctuation meant to close the subject. "Go back to bed, babe. I'll be there soon." Once I would have believed that explanation without question, but now I noticed the hollowness in her kiss, the flicker of worry in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. Suspicion warred with guilt inside me. The rational move would have been to ask her directly, but a quieter, sharper instinct whispered, "Don't confront. Watch." So I began watching, quietly, subtly. I set our home router to flag unusual network activity. A few days later, while reviewing the logs, I found something I couldn't ignore. The smart lock recorded an entry at 12:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. The door opened and closed again at 1:05 p.m. I was in Omaha that day, tied up in meetings at the bank's headquarters. Evan had been at school. Erin had texted me around noon saying she was grabbing lunch. Apparently lunch meant coming home. She hadn't mentioned it. No other codes were used on the smart lock, only hers. Meaning she came home alone. Or at least she was the only one with access. My hands trembled as I opened the security app and pulled up footage from the driveway camera. There she was, Erin, stepping out of her car in the midday sun. Seconds later, another car pulled in behind her, a dark blue sedan I didn't recognize. It parked along the curb. A man got out. Broad shoulders, late 30s, maybe early 40s. He jogged toward the door beside her, his hand brushing her lower back as they entered together. The recording ended the moment the door closed. 40 silent minutes passed before the next clip began. The outdoor camera by the front porch only triggered when it picked up movement. During that entire recording window, no one left the house. Then, at precisely 1:30 p.m., the door creaked open, and she stepped out. Erin and the man shared a brief kiss, unmistakably intimate, impossible to misinterpret. His hand lingered against her face, tender and deliberate, before they slowly pulled apart. She walked him to his car, stood there until he drove away, and then hurried toward her own vehicle moments later. Even through the blurry footage I saw it, the glow in her expression, a radiance I hadn't witnessed in years. That satisfied smile. I knew in my gut it wasn't meant for me. I froze the video. My hands shook so violently that I almost dropped the phone. A cold flood washed over me, nausea, rage, dread, twisting together into something unbearable. This isn't real. It can't be real. Watching my wife, my Erin, wrapped up in someone else's arms, felt like stepping outside reality itself, even though it lasted only seconds. My thoughts scrambled for an explanation. A friend? A relative? But no relative kissed like that, especially not in the middle of a weekday at our house. Anger struck sharp and fast, followed by a hollow ache so deep it made me dizzy. I realized I was gripping the edge of my desk, knuckles bone white. I forced myself to breathe slow, steady breaths, the kind I used during major crises at work. One step at a time, no panic. Minutes passed before the adrenaline faded enough for me to think clearly. By then, the shock had hardened into grim resolve. I needed answers, every last detail, before I confronted her. People say curiosity killed the cat. In my case, curiosity was about to rip away whatever illusions were left of my marriage. If Erin had invited that man into our home, the place I thought was sacred, I didn't want to imagine what else had happened, or how long it had been going on. A midday meeting like that suggested something rushed, stolen. But how many stolen moments were there? And who was he? My brain spun through every possibility. A colleague? A stranger passing through town? One of our friends? Each theory cut deeper than the last. That night, I lay beside her, pretending to sleep while chaos churned in my head. She rested so peacefully as though nothing were wrong. I couldn't reconcile the quiet woman next to me with the one I'd seen on that screen earlier that day. My jaw ached from clenching, but I stayed still, breathing evenly. By morning, a plan had formed. Desperate, reckless, but a plan nonetheless. In my line of work, when you suspect a breach, you set up a honeypot. A trap meant to lure the intruder and expose them. That's exactly what I would do now. Only this time, the intruder wasn't in a server. Over breakfast, I slipped it into conversation. An upcoming tech conference in Kansas City that weekend. Kind of last minute, I said casually, spreading butter on my toast and forcing a smile. My boss thinks it'd be good for me to go. I'd leave Friday afternoon, back Sunday. Erin paused mid-pour, cereal bowl in hand. For just a heartbeat, barely visible, tension rippled across her shoulders. And then it vanished. This weekend? She said, surprised. That's sudden. Yeah, I shrugged, keeping my tone light. Not thrilled, But hey, free networking, free training. She crossed the kitchen, gave my shoulder a squeeze and smiled. Of course, you always take the good opportunities. I've got things handled here. Her voice was casual, but beneath it, I heard something else. Relief. The realization twisted my stomach into knots. Evan, oblivious, asked if he could have a friend over Saturday since Dad won't be here. Aaron answered for me. Maybe Grandma could take him to the movies instead. Another detail, another clue. She was already arranging to keep our son out of the house. My resolve hardened. Friday arrived. I packed a small overnight bag, kissed my son goodbye, and hugged Aaron at the door. I wondered if she noticed how stiff I felt in her arms. I'll call you tonight, I said. Drive safe, she replied with a faint smile. Her eyes glistened. Was it guilt, or was I just imagining it? I got in my car, waved as I pulled away, and didn't go far. 2 streets over, I parked under a sprawling oak by an empty lot, my heart pounding. I pulled out my tablet and logged into our home security feed. Before leaving, I had repositioned one of the old nanny cams, the ones we'd installed back when Evan was a toddler, so it now covered the living room and stairs leading to our bedroom. And I'd added another, a tiny hidden camera tucked among books on the shelf in our bedroom, thanks to overnight shipping. I never imagined I'd become the kind of man who spied on his own wife. But this was my house, and I needed the truth. I convinced myself it was reasonable, necessary even, to document whatever unfolded in my absence. Whether the law saw it that way or not didn't matter. I needed answers. I couldn't keep living in uncertainty. I needed every piece of the truth. The setup was simple enough. Small cameras connected to my home server streamed live footage straight to my tablet, accessible wherever I went. If she had the audacity to bring him into our house again, I'd know instantly. I sat in my car, parked down the street, engine off, street lamp shadows cutting across the windshield. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. I clenched them tight until they steadied. This was the moment. No retreat, no excuses left. Fear twisted in my gut, threatening to make me sick, yet beneath it was something colder. A hunger for confirmation. Part of me dreaded what I might see, another part needed to see it. I didn't have to wait long. Around 6, a soft chime sounded from my tablet. The front door camera had picked up movement. Erin appeared on the screen, stepping onto the porch. Her head darted left and right, scanning the quiet street. She wasn't dressed for a lazy evening in. Gone were the loose shirts and worn pajama bottoms. Instead, she wore a fitted blue blouse and jeans, hair freshly styled, posture tense yet alive. I hardly recognized her face. Anticipation glowed there, excitement barely contained. Moments later, headlights swept across the driveway as a dark blue sedan pulled up. My stomach turned to lead. The man who stepped out was unmistakable, the same one from the earlier footage. This time I saw him clearly. Tall, athletic build, a self-assured gait that spoke of entitlement. He bounded up the steps toward her. Erin met him halfway, nearly throwing herself into his arms before he even reached the porch. Their kiss was shameless. Open, hungry, as though the threshold of my home belonged to them. A flash of white-hot anger seared my vision. My chest tightened until it hurt to breathe. The sheer boldness of it, doing this at my door, made my hands twitch with rage. But I stayed still, watching, recording. This was proof, concrete, inarguable. They disappeared inside, the door clicking shut behind them. I switched the feed to the living room camera. There they were, hand in hand, strolling casually through the space where my family had shared countless movie nights. Within seconds they were on the couch. Their mouths locked together, frantic, starved. His hands traced her body, hers pulled at his hair, clinging. My throat went dry. A part of me wanted to smash the tablet, shatter the screen, and erase the images forever. Another part couldn't turn away, horrified but transfixed. Between ragged breaths and hurried kisses, they whispered to each other. I turned up the volume. "Missed you, Dylan," Erin murmured. Dylan. The name lodged itself in my mind like a shard of glass. "I missed you too," he replied, lifting her chin with a tenderness that twisted my stomach. The way he looked at her, familiar, soft, was the look I once thought belonged only to me. "All clear tonight? He's really gone?" Dylan asked with a smirk. "He's gone till Sunday," she whispered back. "We've got the whole weekend. No one will know." My stomach flipped. That was enough. More than enough. I muted the sound before the next words could carve themselves into my memory. The sight alone was unbearable. Dylan scooped her into his arms. She let out a quiet, delighted squeal as he carried her up the stairs. Up to our bedroom. Something inside me broke clean through. There was no mistaking it now. This wasn't a single lapse or a fleeting mistake. This was an ongoing affair, comfortable, familiar, established, carried out beneath my roof. I don't recall deciding to move. One heartbeat, I sat frozen in the car. The next, the engine roared as I tore down the street toward home. The tablet slid onto the floorboard as I gripped the wheel, vision tunneling into crimson haze. A faint voice inside me whispered, "Don't do something you can't undo." I wasn't a violent man, not usually. But betrayal like this awakened something feral. Images flashed, me dragging him out, fists flying, shouting, chaos. Then Evan's face surfaced in my mind. My son. I forced a ragged breath. If I couldn't stop for my own sake, I had to stop for his. But confrontation was inevitable. No more waiting. No more calm. Minutes later, my tires screeched into the driveway. Barely 10 minutes had passed since Dylan's arrival. I killed the engine, flung the door open, and sprinted to the house. Didn't even notice the slam of metal behind me. The front door was unlocked. In their rush, they hadn't even bothered to secure it. That small detail fueled my fury even higher. I stepped inside, silent. From above came faint sounds, rhythmic creaks, breathless laughter, the unmistakable groan of our bed frame. A man's jacket dangled lazily over the railing, and one of Aaron's heels sat forgotten halfway up the staircase. Each stray item struck me like a clue in a crime scene, pieces of a puzzle snapping into place, forming an image I didn't want to see but could no longer deny. Rage surged through me, white-hot and blinding, as my heart hammered against my ribs. I bounded up the steps, taking them two at a time. The house blurred around me. I wasn't climbing. I was hurtling forward, propelled by fury rather than muscle. Time fractured. Every sound, every movement stretched sharp and crystalline, as though the air itself had slowed to witness what I was about to find. The bedroom door was ajar, tilted just enough to betray movement inside. Through the sliver of space, I caught sight of shadows twisting together, bodies intertwined where they should never have been. Our bed. My bed. I don't recall pushing the door wider, only the jarring moment I realized I was standing there, framed in the threshold. Two half-dressed figures jolted apart, scrambling, gasping, an animal panic filling the air as though I'd caught them mid-crime. What the hell? Erin's voice cracked, shrill and desperate, as she clawed at the sheets, clutching them to her chest as though fabric could erase the truth. And Dylan, of course it was Dylan, stumbled over himself, yanking at his jeans in frantic silence, face pale but flushed with guilt. I stood rooted to the floor, chest rising and falling in harsh rhythm, my eyes drinking in every detail like a curse. The lingering sweetness of cheap perfume, the damp heat of sweat clinging to the walls. The framed photo of our wedding on the dresser, its silent accusations screaming louder than any words I could summon. I didn't yell, didn't move. My silence pressed down heavier than a scream ever could. My body trembled, not with grief, but with fury so sharp it stripped me of speech. Erin's face drained of color, tears swelled but refused to fall. "Derek, I can explain," she stammered, voice thin and breaking. When I finally found my words, they emerged low and unfamiliar, cold, brittle, almost inhuman. "You'd better." I stepped into the room, my stare cutting straight through Dylan. "But first," I said, each syllable a warning, "he leaves, now." Dylan had his pants halfway up, trying to compose himself, straightening his back, lifting his chin like that might restore some shred of dignity. He was taller than me by an inch or two, built like he thought he could hold his ground. But one look into my eyes and I saw the fight drain out of him. He knew. We all knew. "Look, man," he started, hands half raised in some pathetic hybrid of apology and self-defense. Red scratches scored his bare chest, Erin's marks. I wished I hadn't seen them. "Get out," I cut him off, voice low but trembling with the violence I fought to contain. "Out of my house now." he faltered, glancing toward Erin as though waiting for her to intervene, to shield him. She didn't. Wrapped in the sheets, she sat motionless, her eyes glassy and vacant, lips pressed tight against words she couldn't form. After a long, hanging moment, she gave him the smallest nod, a silent command, or maybe a plea for him to leave before I snapped. Dylan swallowed hard, his jaw tight. "All right," he muttered flatly. "I'm going." He scooped up his shoes in one hand, his shirt in the other. As he brushed past me in the doorway, he had the audacity to look me in the eye. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, but the words were hollow, perfunctory, an apology stripped of weight. I didn't answer. Didn't even blink. I shifted barely half a step to give him room, my fists clenched so tight my nails bit into my palms. If he'd touched me, just grazed me, I'm not sure I could have stopped myself. But he didn't. Bare feet thudded down the stairs. A second later, the front door slammed. Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. I turned back to her, my wife. Erin sat hunched on the bed, sheets twisted around her like bindings, her face ghost white, her gaze fixed on the floor. My chest felt like a vice, crushing inward, the air squeezed out of me. I couldn't tell if her trembling came from fear, shame, or the shock of exposure. "Derek," she whispered, voice barely audible. "Please, let me explain." I said nothing. Couldn't. One wrong word and I might shatter completely. So I breathed. Focused on the faint rasp of carpet beneath my shoes, anything but the searing image burned into my mind. Her. Him. Here. When I finally spoke, my tone was steady, almost calm, but honed to a razor's edge. "Explain." Her eyes lifted, glassy with tears, pleading for something I didn't yet know if I could give. "Yes, Erin," I said, each word slow, deliberate, cutting. "Explain what I just walked into. Help me understand how the woman I trusted, loved, could do this." She flinched at the words as though struck. In all our years together, I had never spoken to her this way. Now every syllable landed like ice on raw skin. It's not what it looks like," she whispered, voice splintering. A bitter laugh ripped out of me before I could stop it. This isn't what you think," she stuttered, voice breaking. "Erin," my tone was flat, razor sharp. "Don't insult me. What I'm looking at," I went on, disbelief cutting through every word, "is you in our bed, in our home, with someone else, after months of lying to my face. So unless there's some miracle explanation you've been saving, this is exactly what it looks like." Her whole body seemed to cave in on itself, shoulders hunched, face buried in trembling hands, sobs tearing out of her throat. "I'm sorry," she gasped between ragged breaths, voice muffled against her palms. "I never wanted you to find out like this. I never wanted to hurt you." "Never wanted to hurt me?" My voice cracked, fury tangled with disbelief. "What the hell did you think this would do to me? Every single day this was happening, I was being shredded apart, even if I didn't know it yet." I dragged in a deep breath, chest heaving, fighting to keep my voice from exploding into a scream. I couldn't lose myself to the rage. Not yet. I needed answers. When she finally lowered her hands, black mascara streaked her face in messy trails. I'd rarely seen her look so small, so defeated. "It just happened," she whispered, hollow. "I didn't plan it, Derek. I was lonely. Dylan was there at work, and I made a mistake." "A mistake?" The word felt bitter on my tongue. "A mistake is once. This?" My arm shot toward the bed, the twisted sheets, her barely covered body. "This is a series of choices you made over and over again." She winced, sobbing harder now. "You're right," she admitted, voice breaking. "It wasn't just once. I was miserable, and I did something unforgivable. But I never wanted to leave you. I swear I never stopped loving you." "Loving me?" The word ripped out of me like poison. "You've got a twisted way of showing it." Hearing her claim love, while standing there draped in betrayal, was like salt in a wound I didn't know could still deepen. She slipped off the far side of the bed, clutching the sheet to her chest like it might shield her from me. "I know you're angry," she said softly. You have every right to be. But if we could just talk. Angry? My voice dropped to something low and dangerous. Angry doesn't even begin to cover it. How long, Aaron? How long has this been happening? Her eyes sank to the floor. A few months, she murmured. The timeline hit me instantly. Spring. Now it was August. 5, maybe 6 months. My stomach twisted as memories fell into place. Those late nights at the office, the sudden girls' nights, random weekend trips to her sister's. I'd been living blind, the picture-perfect, trusting husband, while she— Were you with him? I demanded. The night you swore you were working late, and that weekend you said you were at your sister's? Fresh tears streaked down her face as she gave a tiny nod. I'm so sorry. Stop. My hand shot up, silencing her. Stop saying you're sorry. Sorry doesn't touch this. I turned away, pacing, dragging both hands through my hair. I hadn't even taken off my shoes. I stood fully dressed in the doorway of my own bedroom while she trembled half-naked, wrapped in a sheet like a stranger in my house. The absurdity of it all punched a bitter, humorless laugh out of me. God, I was blind, I muttered to myself. Then I faced her again. Does everyone know? Do our friends know? Was I the only fool in the room this whole time? Her head snapped up, eyes wide with panic. No! No one knows! I was careful. We were careful. It was never about humiliating you, Derek. Oh, I spat, voice laced with acid. Great. At least you managed to protect my reputation while you destroyed my marriage. Gold star for that. She flinched at the venom but didn't back away. Instead, she stepped forward hesitantly. I know it sounds hollow, she whispered. But I regret it. I ended it tonight. Even before you walked in, I was going to tell him it was over. Because I want to fix this. I want to fix us. My eyebrow lifted in disbelief at the boldness of her fabrication. That's what you're going with? Really? Half-dressed in his arms, and you call that ending it? Looked a hell of a lot more like something else to me. The words cut sharper than any blade. Her explanations only fueled the fire raging inside me. Erin gripped the sheet tighter around her shaking shoulders, tears streaking down her cheeks. I know you don't believe me, she choked out, voice splintering. But I love you. I love what we have. I was going to stop. A harsh laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Stop? And what then? Give you another chance to polish your lies? I shook my head, heat rising in my chest. You must really think I'm as stupid as I've been acting. She stumbled forward, frantic, shaking her head violently. No, that's not it. I didn't mean it like that. It's my fault. All of it. I own that. I need you to understand it wasn't because I stopped loving you. I was weak. I was lonely. And your cure for that loneliness was to burn our marriage to the ground? My voice came out jagged, every word a shard of glass. While I walked around clueless, thinking everything was fine? Do you even grasp what you've done? To me? To Evan? The moment I said our son's name, something inside me splintered. My throat tightened as I gestured between us. What do we tell him? How do we explain this to a child? Do you even understand how badly this wrecks his world? Erin crumbled into sobs, her words tumbling over each other in desperation. Please, we can fix this. We can get therapy, take time away, anything. I'll quit my job. I'll cut him out forever. Just don't throw this away. I know I failed you, but we're still a family, Derek. I stared at her, stunned by the audacity of her plea, to beg me to save what she'd already destroyed. My heart hammered against my ribs, threatening to tear through them. I closed my eyes, flashes stabbing through my mind, her lips on his, the stolen glances, the unknown number on the phone bill. And then Evan's face, innocent, trusting, burned into me. I had to stay strong, for him, if not for myself. When I opened my eyes, something in me had shifted. Erin felt it too. I saw it in the way her sobs faded, her voice stilled. For the first time that night, she truly looked at me and saw someone she didn't recognize. I'm not deciding anything tonight, I said at last, voice level, almost cold. Accept this. Whatever was happening between you and him ends. Now. There will be no more contact. Do you understand? She nodded frantically, desperate. Yes, yes, I swear. Empty promises. But at least the words were out there. As for us? I drew in a long, steady breath. I need space, away from you. Her eyes widened with panic. Where will you go? Somewhere else, I muttered, turning toward the door. You don't need to know. At the doorway, I paused, my hand resting against the frame. I turned back one last time. She stood there, wrapped in a sheet, surrounded by the wreckage of our life. An image burned into memory, one I'd never forget. For a brief heartbeat, pity flickered in me, almost, but I crushed it down. For Evan's sake, I'll stay civil, I said quietly. But Aaron, I can't even look at you right now without... I cut myself off, shaking my head. The words wouldn't come. We'll talk when I'm ready. Until then, start figuring out how you're even going to begin earning back a shred of trust, if that's even possible. Her mouth opened, maybe to beg again, but I didn't stay to hear it. I walked out, her sobs chasing me down the stairs. A guttural cry erupted behind me, raw and primal, clawing at the walls. I grabbed my keys and the duffel bag I'd packed for my so-called trip. Ironic. This one was real, straight to a lawyer's office, straight to the fallout she never saw coming. The front door closed softly behind me. Cool night air hit my burning face. Above, the Nebraska sky stretched wide and merciless, stars glinting coldly, silent witnesses to the implosion of my world. I stood there on the porch, letting the reality settle. The sterile phrase from premarital counseling echoed in my head, irretrievably broken. And I knew then, whatever came next, the man who once loved blindly and trusted completely was gone. In his place stood someone different, hardened, resolved. I stepped off the porch, a strange calm settling over me even as tears I hadn't felt forming streaked my face. I had seen them. I had caught them in the act. The betrayal cut deep, soul-crushing, intimate. But in the ashes of that devastation, something else emerged. Aaron had no idea what kind of man she had just awakened. Chapter 3. Calculated resolve. That night felt endless, stretching far beyond any sleepless hours I had known before. I ended up in a dilapidated roadside motel on the city's edge, the kind with a flickering neon vacancy sign that buzzed faintly against the silence and a parking lot that looked like no one had used it in years. Once I bolted the door behind me, the enormity of everything I'd just uncovered crashed down all at once. My legs gave out, and I crumpled onto the uneven mattress, burying my face in my hands. For the first time since uncovering the truth, I stopped holding myself together. The sobs came hard and fast, tearing through me without control. My whole body trembled, lungs seizing with each uneven breath as betrayal and devastation surged out in hot waves. I pressed a pillow over my face, desperate to muffle the sounds, even though no one could hear me in that stale, cigarette-stained room. The hum of the ancient air conditioner droned on, indifferent to my collapse. Aaron's face haunted me. Dylan's too. They flashed behind my closed eyelids in an endless, merciless loop, her lips at his ear, her whispers meant for him alone. The image twisted my gut. The ache was more than emotional. It felt like a physical wound tearing through my chest, as if my heart had been cleaved in two. My thoughts kept drifting to everything we had built, the plans that once felt so certain, quiet evenings beneath the oak trees in our backyard, cheering for Evan at his graduation, traveling together after retirement. Now all those dreams felt like cruel illusions, mocking me in the wake of her betrayal. By the time dawn's first light began bleeding into the room, my tears had run dry, leaving only a hollow numbness behind. The grief didn't fade. It hardened into something colder. I couldn't stay here, paralyzed. I needed to move, to act. Instinct took over, the kind I'd honed from years of handling crises. I grabbed the motel's notepad and started outlining everything that had to be locked down. Proof of her cheating, our financial assets, custody rights for Evan, the house. I forced myself to frame it all as a matter to solve, not an emotional implosion, but a logistical war plan. Safeguard what's mine, make them face what they've done. My phone buzzed relentlessly on the nightstand, Erin's name lighting up the screen again and again. Her texts piled up, apologies, pleas, frantic demands that I come home. Derek, please, we need to talk. I'm sorry, I love you. Do this for Evan, don't shut me out. Where are you? Please answer. At least tell me you're safe. Don't do anything you'll regret. Just come back home. I didn't answer once. Instead, I saved every message, archiving them carefully. They weren't just words, they were evidence, proof of her guilt and her manipulation. When the flood of notifications wouldn't stop, I silenced the phone entirely. I couldn't risk distraction. The rest of the night became an exercise in cold precision. On my laptop, I remotely accessed our home network and downloaded every incriminating scrap, videos, photos, call logs. The midday porch meeting, the explicit footage from only hours before, all of it encrypted, saved to multiple backups. A hard drive in my duffel bag. A cloud account she didn't know existed. A USB drive hidden in my wallet. She wouldn't erase or deny a thing. I exported her call history, captured screenshots of her frantic texts, compiling them into an ironclad record. As I worked, I felt detached, clinical almost, as though I were cataloging evidence for someone else's nightmare rather than my own. By 5 a.m, after hours of grim efficiency, I finally collapsed onto the bed, eyes burning and body numb. Businesses would open soon. So would law offices. I already knew exactly who I'd call, a divorce attorney in Omaha with a reputation for dismantling opponents in court. I'd read about her once. She'd gutted a high-profile case like a predator circling prey. This was the kind of fight that needed someone like her. Sleep came in fragments. My dreams taunted me. Brief flashes of happiness, Erin laughing on a park swing the moment Evan was born, and we held each other crying in awe, twisted cruelly into visions of her, tangled up in Dylan's arms. I was always too late, always arriving just as they turned to look at me. I woke with a jolt near 7, my heart pounding, breath ragged, like I'd been falling. With sunrise came a grim clarity. Every time sorrow threatened to drag me under, I conjured the memory of her expression when I walked out, the smirk, the hint of contempt in her tone. No woman who loved me could ever have done this. Whatever love I thought existed between us was gone. Maybe it had never been there at all. What remained was obligation. Protect my son. Shield what was left of my life from the wreckage she'd caused. At exactly 8:30, I made the call. The receptionist patched me through when I insisted it was urgent, and within moments I heard a voice, brisk, authoritative. "This is Laura Pierce. How can I help you?" I drew in a steady breath. "Laura, my name is Derek. I need the best divorce lawyer I can get. My wife's having an affair. I have proof. I need to know my options." My voice surprised me with how level it sounded. She didn't hesitate. "I'm sorry you're going through this, Derek. You did the right thing calling early. Has she filed anything yet, or is this just coming to light?" "Just found out yesterday," I said. For a heartbeat, her tone softened, a flicker of human sympathy breaking through the steel. "That just happened?" "Yes," I said. "Then we don't have time to waste. Can you make it to my office in Omaha today? I can squeeze you in during my lunch hour for an emergency consult." "I'll be there," I answered instantly. She rattled off the address, and we set noon as the time. Just before ending the call, she added, "Bring everything you've got. Bank records, statements, proof of the affair, anything you've uncovered about the other person. We'll map out a strategy." "I've got proof," I said, voice low. "Plenty." The call ended, and with it came a strange calm. Step 1 of the plan was in motion. I immediately drafted an email to my boss, requesting a few days off for a family emergency. A sick day would have worked, but that risked questions, whispers about marital problems. Vague was safer. Minutes later, he replied with sympathy. saying he understood and hoped things were okay. His kindness hit me harder than expected. Things were anything but okay, yet his words gave me space to breathe, to plan. Before checking out of the motel, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Bloodshot eyes, hollow cheeks, a face I barely recognized. After a quick shower and a clean shirt from my duffel, I looked slightly less wrecked. Still empty, still raw, but under the exhaustion was something sharper, rage and determination. I paid cash at the front desk to avoid leaving a trace. Nebraska City was small, but Monday mornings moved slow. I doubted Aaron knew where I was yet, or what I was about to do. I parked a few blocks from our house and walked the neighborhood in wide circles, careful to stay out of sight. I wasn't ready to face Aaron, not yet. But I had to make sure Evan was safe. Earlier that morning, I'd texted my mother-in-law, asking if Evan had spent the night at her place. She confirmed he had. Aaron told her I'd been called away for work after the movie last night. That lie burned in my chest, but I was relieved. Evan was safe, far from the chaos, for now. I thanked her and promised to pick him up from school later. She replied warmly, saying she was happy to help and hoped we were okay. Deceiving her felt awful, but the truth would come out when I decided, not when Aaron spun it. With time to kill before noon, I headed to the bank. Locking down our finances was next. Nebraska's no-fault divorce laws wouldn't punish Aaron's cheating in dividing assets or custody, except in rare cases. But if I could prove she'd spent marital money on the affair, that misuse could give me leverage in the settlement. Standing in line, I felt exposed, like everyone could read my thoughts. I kept my head down, waiting for my turn. When I finally sat with a financial officer, I quietly opened a new account in my name only. Over the next half hour, I moved half the funds from our joint accounts into it, documenting every transfer. This wasn't to hide money. It was protection. If things turned ugly, Aaron couldn't clean us out overnight. I froze our home equity line of credit and changed our online banking password. Aaron rarely checked the accounts, so she wouldn't notice right away, but I wasn't leaving openings. Before leaving, I requested printed statements for the past year. Sitting in the lobby, flipping through the pages, I found exactly what I feared and expected. A hefty jewelry purchase in May. My birthday was in March, and I hadn't seen a gift. Hotel charges in Omaha over the summer. No family trips, no explanation. Restaurant tabs for places I'd never been. Black and white proof. She'd been wining and dining him, on our dime. I slipped the statements into my growing evidence folder. By the time I left the bank, noon was approaching. The hour-long drive to Omaha passed in a haze as I rehearsed what I'd say. My thumb drummed on the steering wheel, an old nervous habit I hadn't done in years. I forced myself to stop. Hold it together, I told myself. This is only phase 1. Laura's office occupied a gleaming high-rise downtown. Walking through the marble lobby in my small-town casual clothes, I felt out of place, but reminded myself I belonged here. I was the client. After a brief wait, her assistant led me in. Laura stood, offering a firm handshake and a calm, measured look. "Derek," she said, "come on in. Let's see what you've got." I slid the folder across her desk. Her brows rose slightly as she skimmed through the pages. "This," she said quietly, "is very compelling." "There's more where that came from," I told her, voice steady. "I've got everything. Recordings, call logs, full documentation." I gave her a brief explanation of how I'd put it all together. A part of me braced for a lecture, expecting her to tell me I'd crossed some legal boundary. But I hadn't. Every single thing I'd collected was mine to access. Security footage from our house, records from the phone plan we both used. Nothing shady, nothing illegal. Laura gave a single nod. "Understood. Nebraska's a no-fault divorce state. Technically, you don't even need proof to finalize things. Your word that the marriage can't be repaired is enough. That said, what you've gathered, incredibly useful." She tapped one of the photos I'd placed on her desk. "This kind of evidence strengthens your position. If she's worried about the fallout, she may be more open to favorable terms once she realizes you can prove the affair. And if she used marital funds on that relationship, that matters too. Judges don't take kindly to spouses who squander joint money on an affair. A dark sense of justice settled over me. I'm not letting her walk away without consequence, I said. I already transferred half our joint funds into a separate account and traced every cent tied to him. I pushed the highlighted bank statements across the table. Laura scanned them, then gave an approving nod. Smart. Nebraska splits property equitably, not automatically down the middle. If she spent, say, $5,000 of shared funds on him, we can argue for you to recover that during asset division. Courts aim for fairness. She leaned back in her chair. Let's talk custody. Your son's 8, right? The court bases custody on what's best for the child. An affair alone doesn't make someone unfit. But if the child was exposed to unsafe people or harmful situations, that's different. Has your son ever met this man? I shook my head hard. No, she hid it. She wouldn't risk Evan finding out. Then, without proof the child's been harmed, judges usually prefer joint custody, unless something more serious comes to light. She's a good mom, I admitted reluctantly. It was true, and acknowledging it cut deep. Erin never failed Evan. Me, yes, but not him. Her betrayal was mine to carry, though I knew it would shake Evan's world when he learned the truth. I want primary custody, I said firmly. I don't have the full plan yet, but I can't handle losing time with him. And honestly, I don't want him living in her house when I'm not there. Laura studied me for a moment. I understand. We can aim for you to be the primary residential parent and for her to have visitation. The fact that you work remotely while she's at an office job could help. More time for school pickups, activities, daily routines. But you need to be realistic. Unless she agrees, most judges still lean toward joint custody unless there's abuse or something equally serious. Affairs don't usually tip custody decisions. My jaw clenched. No-fault laws or not, I saw her affair as deeply damaging. But I knew the court wouldn't treat it that way. Still, I had to do everything I could to protect Evan. Then we build the strongest case we can, I said. Bare minimum, I want her boyfriend nowhere near my son. Can we request something like a morality clause? No overnight guests who aren't family when Evan's around? That's common, Laura said, jotting it down. Good. A small breath of relief left me. At least there was one boundary I could enforce. We spent the next hour going through every detail. I described the confrontation, Erin's wild swings from desperate apologies to threats of dragging my name through the mud. Laura's expression sharpened. She's already spinning her side of the story, Laura said. We should file quickly, before she gets coached or reframes everything. She asked if there had ever been abuse. None, I answered bitterly, unless you count what she did to me. We covered the finances, income, debts, assets. It was all straightforward. A modest house, 2 vehicles, savings, retirement accounts, ordinary middle-class life, nothing complicated. But I made myself clear. I wanted every legal edge possible. I wasn't going to let Erin exit this without consequences. By the time I left, Laura had laid out the steps ahead. If you're ready to move forward, Laura began, her voice calm yet firm, I can draft the divorce paperwork this week and arrange to have her served. You'll be named as the petitioner, she continued. Under Nebraska law, only one party needs to state that the marriage is beyond repair. That will be me, I answered without hesitation. We won't list adultery directly in the petition, Laura clarified. But sometimes we attach a statement noting it, not because it sways the court, but to establish context. Whether you want that included is up to you. I hesitated, weighing the idea. I want it included, I said at last. Even if it doesn't affect the outcome, I need the record to reflect why this is ending. Her expression stayed measured as she gave a brief nod. That's doable. I'll think on it, I added, forcing myself to hide the satisfaction I felt. The idea of her being served at work fit perfectly with my broader plan, to make the affair known without ambiguity. That can be arranged, Laura said, her tone free of judgment. As the meeting wrapped up, I gathered the folder of documents I'd brought with me. "Thank you," I said, meaning it. "This is overwhelming, but having a clear path helps." "That's why I'm here," she replied, her voice firm but encouraging. "We'll handle this step by step. Stay in touch, and if anything changes or new information surfaces, let me know immediately." She paused, then added, "One more thing. Keep communication with her minimal and polite. From this point on, anything you say could become evidence. If she sends emotional or hostile messages, don't respond in kind. Save them and forward them to me." I thought of the messages she'd already sent, and the ones I knew were coming once she realized I'd spoken to a lawyer or moved funds. "Understood," I said quietly. "I don't want to fight with her. Honestly, I'd rather not speak to her at all right now." As I stood to leave, Laura's voice softened. "Take care of yourself, Derek. What you've been through is traumatic. Lean on family or friends if you can. Rest when you can. You'll need your strength for what's ahead." Her compassion nearly cracked the shell I was trying so hard to keep intact. I gave a small nod. "I will, and I'll figure out how to tell my family." Stepping out into the sharp brightness of early afternoon, I felt a strange storm of emotions. The sorrow hit first, a heavy weight in my chest. Discussing the end of my marriage in legal terms had made everything brutally real. But under that grief was something else, a cold, deliberate resolve. I had taken the first step toward protecting myself and Evan. A plan was forming now, no longer just raw anger and pain, and I wasn't navigating it alone. I had someone who knew exactly what to do. Sliding into my car, I gripped the steering wheel and stared out at the Omaha skyline. "This is happening," I admitted to myself. She destroyed what we had, and now I have to rebuild from the ruins. But first, she, and the man she chose, will face the fallout. My phone buzzed, a text from Aaron, the first in hours. "Derek, I told my boss I'm taking a personal day. Please, can we meet tonight and talk? I'll do anything. I'm so sorry." I stared at her words, my first instinct to unleash every ounce of rage I felt. But Laura's warning echoed in my mind. Instead, I typed carefully, "I need space. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk. Evan will be home after school. I'll pick him up. We can handle the handoff calmly." Her reply came almost instantly. "Okay, I understand. I won't cause a scene. Thank you." The words grated against me. Not gratitude, not compliance, not now. She was walking on eggshells, trying not to push me further away, but it was far too late for that. I didn't answer. Instead, I started the engine and merged into traffic, my focus sharpening. There were preparations to make, details to finalize. The first move had already been made, quietly, without her knowing. This wouldn't be quick, it wouldn't be easy. But I was committed. Her betrayal had ignited a cold fire inside me, and I intended to see it through, calculated, precise, relentless. Chapter 4. Reconnaissance. In the days that followed, I moved with quiet purpose. Every interaction with Aaron was pared down to the bare minimum. Brief, transactional texts or messages passed through her parents when arranging care for Evan. I kept my tone even, refusing to let the storm boiling beneath my ribs leak into my voice. Every exchange between us felt like a carefully recorded tally, each phrase another calculated step in a silent contest neither of us dared to name. 2 days after that explosion, on a Tuesday, I had to return to the house. More of my things were still there, and I couldn't leave them behind. I also had another purpose: to search for anything she might have overlooked, any slip I could later turn to my advantage. Before I left, I sent her a message. "I'll stop by around 5 to grab the rest of my stuff. Can you have Evan at your mom's until I'm done? I'd rather we not run into each other right now." Her answer came almost immediately. "Understood. I'll be out shopping anyway. I'll leave the door unlocked for you." The irony hit like a punch. She was willing to leave the door wide open for me now when she hadn't even bothered locking it against him. Still, she was cooperating. Maybe she thought compliance might keep me from erupting. At exactly 5 o'clock, I pulled into the driveway of what had once been our home. I lingered on the path, staring at the front door. The summer sun hung low in the sky, stretching the oak trees' shadows long and jagged across the yard. Only a week ago, this place had been my refuge. Now it felt alien, hostile. I inhaled sharply, braced myself, and stepped inside. The silence struck me first. The air still carried traces of her perfume, mingled with the clean scent of her favorite detergent. Memories surged without warning. Movie nights on the couch, Evan's Lego fortresses spilling across the floor, the smell of dinner wafting in from the kitchen. I forced them down hard. This wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene, and I was here to collect evidence. I moved deliberately from room to room. First, I gathered what I had come for: clothes, my shaving kit, a stack of files from the office. Then I began the search. In the bedroom, I paused at the dresser we had once shared. My eyes landed on her jewelry box, a small wooden chest holding the pieces she treasured most. The memory of that unexplained jewelry purchase resurfaced, sharp and clear. I exhaled and lifted the lid. Among the familiar earrings and bracelets lay something new, a delicate gold chain with a heart-shaped pendant. I hadn't given it to her. A sick weight coiled in my stomach. I held it up, letting it dangle in my palm. A tiny jeweler's tag glinted at the clasp, 14K gold heart engraved. I turned the pendant over. The inscription was there, etched in soft script, "Forever D." The taste in my mouth went bitter. To Dylan. He'd given this to her. This was the charge I'd seen, the secret she'd kept. And she'd held onto it, cherished it. Beneath the necklace lay a neatly folded note, tucked inside the box as if it belonged there. I opened it. Floral stationery. His handwriting, confident, practiced. I saw this and thought of you. Your strength, your beauty. Our secret. Yours, D. The words blurred as fresh rage ignited in me. I refolded the note with deliberate care and slipped it into my pocket, along with the necklace. These weren't keepsakes anymore. They were evidence. I turned next to her side of the closet. Some clothes were missing, outfits she'd likely worn to him, or maybe left at his place. I made a mental note but kept digging. On the top shelf sat an old tablet, an iPad we'd replaced last year. She'd barely touched it since I'd given her the newer one for Christmas. I remembered setting that older device up under her Apple account and never wiping it afterward. There was a chance it still synced to her messages. My heart thudded as I grabbed it and pressed the home button. The screen lit up, no passcode required. We'd never bothered securing it. It rarely left the house. Battery at 12%, enough. I opened the Messages app, my hands trembling slightly. There it was, a backlog of conversations. Not just with me or friends, but with someone labeled only as D, followed by a heart-eyed emoji. My pulse hammered as I scrolled. Months of messages between Aaron and Dylan unfolded before me. Each line cut deeper than the one before. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Hotel's booked for noon." His words. "I wish we had the whole night, but he'd notice if I came home too late. Soon, maybe." Hers. Photos dotted the thread, small glimpses of intimacy I should never have had to see. Nothing outright obscene, nothing that could be waved around as undeniable proof. Just images. Casual shots of them grinning in what seemed like a park, her leaning against a tree. Then sharper ones, her standing before a mirror in lingerie, captioned simply, "For later." My stomach churned, acid threatening to rise, but I forced it down. My thumb worked on instinct, screenshot after screenshot. In a thread dated barely a week ago, she had typed, "He'll never know." His reply followed instantly. "And if he does, I'll handle it. I promise." My jaw clenched so hard a dull ache rippled through my skull. Handle it. The phrase mocked me. Where was this savior now, when the foundation of her life was about to collapse? Probably scrambling to shield himself, to retreat behind some excuse. Any lingering hope that this was just a single misstep evaporated. This wasn't a stumble. It was deliberate. Ongoing. A double life stitched together with pet names and stolen promises about tomorrows that were never meant for me. My hands shook, not from indecision, but from a sharp fusion of fury and clarity. Their arrogance was breathtaking. They believed their secret was unbreakable, but it was their own words that would bring them down. I shut off the tablet and slid it into my bag. Later, I would comb through every detail, frame by frame. Next came the home office. That room had always been more mine than hers, though Erin occasionally logged in under her profile. I already knew her password, our wedding date. The cruel irony landed like a fist to the gut. I dove into her email, scanning for anything damning. One subject line snagged my attention. Meeting at Clarkson Hotel, dated 2 months back. I opened it. The thread was between her and Dylan, sent from his work email. They had disguised their affair as a client meeting, arranging a secret rendezvous at the downtown Clarkson. There were several others like it, plain, almost boring in tone, but damning all the same. They must have funneled these to her personal address to avoid corporate surveillance. Stupid of him to use company servers at all. I archived the threads as PDFs. If I wanted to burn everything down, including their careers, this would be my weapon. Proof of an affair carried out during company hours, using company resources. After digging through the rest of the files, I found nothing new. But then I saw it. A small slip of paper on the desk. Erin's handwriting scrawled across it. Therapist. Look up marriage counseling. Research divorce lawyers. What does Derek want? The jittery letters, the frantic punctuation, it told me everything. She was rattled, scrambling to guess my next move. A dark satisfaction sparked in me. Good. Let her stew in that fear. I took a photo of the note, then pocketed the original. If she was already seeking legal advice, I had to stay ahead. I'd retained Laura weeks ago. Any competent attorney Erin spoke to would likely warn her not to poke the bear. Maybe that's why her recent texts had felt so cautious. As I walked through the house, I mentally inventoried what I couldn't afford to lose. My grandfather's pocket watch, the external drive holding every family photo. I copied the files, leaving the drive behind so she wouldn't notice. A handful of irreplaceable keepsakes joined them in my bag. I didn't think she'd lash out, not yet. Guilt still kept her soft, but betrayal has a way of reshaping people, turning them sharp. I wasn't going to risk it. One last sweep of the living room, and something caught my eye. Erin's work bag slumped by the couch. From the side pocket, a company directory booklet jutted out. An idea struck hard. Flipping through the pages, I found him. Dylan Bennett, Regional Operations Manager. His office number, his email, even a tiny ID photo, the same smug face I'd seen on the home camera footage. The short bio listed him as married. Wife, Laura Bennett, 2 kids, Rotary Club member, on paper, the perfect family man. A bitter laugh escaped me. I ripped out the page, folding it into my pocket. Inside the same booklet, wedged between pages, I discovered another note, handwritten, scrawled in haste. Next conference in Chicago. Can't wait to sneak away with you again. D. So this wasn't just local, it crossed state lines. Figures. I slipped that note into my pocket as well. It would be useful later. When I finally stood in the living room again, I took in the space one last time. This house, our house, felt gutted now, stripped of warmth, of safety. Above the mantel, the family portrait from last year's Arbor Day picnic hung in its usual place, the 3 of us smiling, unburdened. I left it where it was. Someday, when people came by, they'd stare at that photo and ask themselves what had gone wrong. Locking the front door behind me felt almost ceremonial, a small, final gesture. Back in my car, I sifted through everything I'd gathered, the necklace and her note, the tablet full of messages, the saved email threads, Dylan's contact page, and every other piece of evidence. My arsenal. I felt like a detective stepping out of a criminal den, disgusted by the rot I'd uncovered, yet grimly satisfied at the damning evidence clutched in my hands. That evening, after I tucked Evan into bed, I quietly drove him to the budget motel I'd rented for the night. I told him we were having a guys' night. Pizza, games, no bedtime. He lit up, thrilled by the idea, completely unaware of the storm ripping through his parents' lives. When he finally drifted to sleep, I turned to the task I'd been dreading. I powered up the battered old iPad, transferred every screenshot and photo from their messages onto my laptop, and began reviewing them one by one. The folder was overflowing, dozens of pictures, the two of them sitting close on a park bench downtown, a kiss stolen in her car during daylight, playful selfies sprawled across what was unmistakably a hotel bed. That last one nearly buckled me, her face pressed against his bare shoulder, both of them smiling like reckless teenagers. It nearly shattered me. But I forced myself onward, organizing each file chronologically. Text by text, receipt by receipt, I pieced together a timeline. Their affair seemed to have sparked in late March. By early April, the messages read, "Last night was unforgettable." May was when he gave her that necklace. Spring blurred into summer. Multiple hotel rendezvous lined up perfectly with the charges I'd already uncovered. She'd even dared to bring him into our home, at least once. That day in July, when the security footage showed him walking in at noon. Likely there were other times when I was away for work. The sheer audacity, the frequency, made my head spin. How had she hidden this from me for so long? The depth of the betrayal felt bottomless. One particular exchange from mid-June struck me harder than the rest. Her. Sometimes I'm terrified of what will happen if he ever finds out. He doesn't deserve this. His. He won't. But if he does, I'll protect you. We'll figure it out. Maybe one day we can have a real life together. Her. I don't know if I can do that. I can't stand the thought of hurting him, or Evan. I just want both. You and my family. I'm torn. I had to step away, plant myself at the window, and gulp down air. Even as she betrayed me, she painted herself as the tragic victim, lamenting the pain she might cause, as if her own suffering outweighed mine. It was a rare kind of selfishness, to drive the knife in, then cry over how guilty you feel for stabbing. The sheer gall of it left me hollow. But those very words gave me clarity. She was never going to leave me on her own. She wanted the comfort of our family and the thrill of him. If I hadn't uncovered it, she might have kept this double life going forever. And Dylan? He seemed ready to play house with her someday, if given the chance. For all I knew, they dreamed of me conveniently fading away, or of me never finding out at all. Well, the illusion was over. Their fantasy was about to be destroyed. I assembled a small but damning collection of proof, a handful of the clearest photos, a few undeniable snippets of conversation, impossible to explain away. Then I drafted a concise summary, names, dates, locations, stripped of emotion, nothing but facts. I prepared 2 envelopes. The first was addressed to the HR director at Aaron's office, an anonymous packet showing her and Dylan arranging hotel meetings during work hours, with a note outlining how it might violate company policy. The tone was calm, professional, precise enough to demand attention. The second was far more personal. It bore the name Mrs. Laura Bennett, Dylan's wife. Their address was easy to find in public records, a nice house not far from town. Her packet contained a few of the most incriminating photos and a letter I labored over carefully. Dear Mrs. Bennett, I'm writing to you as a husband who recently discovered that my wife, Erin, has been engaged in an affair with your husband, Dylan. I hate being the one to deliver this, but I believe you have a right to know the truth. Enclosed, you'll find evidence. I have more should you want it. My intention is not to hurt you, only to reveal what's been hidden from us both. I left it unsigned. She would figure out soon enough who sent it. A sharp pang of pity struck me for her. Another spouse about to have her life demolished. But better she learn now than keep living in the dark. She deserved the truth. And if I was honest, part of me wanted Dylan's world to burn alongside mine. Why should he keep his comfort while I drowned? I didn't send the envelopes right away. Timing was everything. Once they were out, there'd be no undoing it. Dylan would be engulfed, at work and at home. Erin would be cornered from every side. I wanted the impact to land with precision, to strike at the exact moment when the fallout would be total. For now, I kept everything locked inside, maintaining my silent watch and waiting for the right moment. By the middle of the week, Erin reached out again, asking if we could meet. This time, her message was longer, more deliberate. Derek, I understand you need space and time. But I have to say again, I am profoundly sorry for what I did. I'll do anything, whatever it takes, to fix this, if that's even possible. I've already contacted a marriage counselor and started reading everything I can about repairing trust after betrayal. Even if you decide to leave, I still need to apologize to you face to face. Please, when you're ready, can we talk? Even if it's only for closure. Her tone had shifted. Gone was the frantic pleading from before. This message felt calmer, more controlled, almost as if someone had coached her on exactly how to phrase it. It was no longer desperation, it was careful contrition. Whether that influence came from a lawyer, a therapist, or something she'd read online, I didn't know, and frankly, I didn't care. To me, it felt like just another calculated move to contain the fallout. After checking in with Laura, I updated her on what I'd learned and how I planned to proceed, carefully omitting the secret envelopes I still kept hidden. We agreed that meeting Erin might actually be worthwhile. Not as a path toward reconciliation, but as an opportunity to gauge her mindset, maybe extract more information. Keeping things outwardly civil could also leave her unsuspecting about what was coming next. I replied to Erin, agreeing to meet that weekend at a neutral location. She suggested a park we used to visit as a family, but I refused. Too sentimental, too risky. Instead, I chose a quiet cafe outside town, secluded enough for privacy, public enough to prevent a scene, far from anyone we might know. The day before the meeting, I found myself driving near Dylan's office, a regional logistics hub. Pretending to grab lunch, I parked across the street and watched employees in dress shirts and ties stream in and out of the glass doors. I wondered if Dylan was inside, oblivious to the storm waiting to hit him. For a brief moment, I pictured myself walking straight in and confronting him then and there. But no, too reckless, too chaotic. My plan required precision, not theatrics. A controlled strike would cut far deeper than any impulsive outburst ever could. That evening, Laura's email arrived. The divorce complaint was finalized, filed, and set for service on Monday, delivered to Erin at work. My chest tightened as I read the official language. Plaintiff, Derek, last name, versus defendant, Erin, last name, grounds listed as irretrievable breakdown of the marriage, with a note citing her affair. Seeing it spelled out in black and white was both liberating and devastating. But I steadied myself. This was necessary. I confirmed with Laura. Monday was locked in, the day everything would begin. Through the weekend, I focused on preparing for the meeting with Erin. The thought of sitting across from her felt surreal, masking the pain and rage, slipping into a role I barely recognized. I kept reminding myself, I had a part to play. The wounded but composed husband, seemingly undecided. If I played it well, I might learn what I needed, whether she suspected anything, whether she was still in contact with Dylan. By Sunday afternoon, I arrived at the cafe early. I chose a corner table, private enough to speak freely, yet public enough to ensure safety, open enough to prevent any theatrics. I settled in, controlled my breathing, projecting calm even as adrenaline thrummed under my skin. When Erin walked in, I braced myself. She looked different, paler, thinner, with dark shadows beneath her eyes. The past week had clearly worn her down. Dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, minimal makeup, she seemed stripped bare in every possible way. Her eyes glistened as soon as she saw me. She blinked rapidly, fighting back tears, and approached slowly, cautiously, like someone approaching a wounded animal, torn between hope and fear. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi," I replied, my voice even. She sat across from me, folding her hands neatly on the table. Silence lingered. This was the closest we'd been since that night. A faint trace of her familiar scent, soap and floral shampoo, hit me unexpectedly, stirring an ache I quickly shoved aside. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, her voice trembling. I gave a slight nod, lifting my water glass just to keep my hands busy. "You said you wanted to talk?" I said flatly. "So, talk." She flinched at my tone but pressed on. First, I need to say I'm so sorry, Derek. I don't even have the words. I broke your trust. I lied. I hurt you in ways I can never take back. Every morning since, I wake up wishing I could undo it. Her voice cracked, tears spilling freely as she wiped them away. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I needed to say this to your face. I regret everything. I studied her quietly, examining every word, every tear. Once, her crying would have pulled me in, made me want to comfort her. Now, I watched coldly, measuring whether this was true remorse or just self-pity. It felt like an impossible mix of emotions, both familiar and foreign at once. I appreciate you saying that, I murmured, my words barely audible. But talk! My breath left me in a sharp sigh. You have to understand something, Aaron. Right now, talk doesn't mean much. She nodded quickly, almost desperately. I know, I do. I realize it's not about what I promise. It's about what I prove. And even then, I'm not sure that would fix anything. Her voice cracked as she spoke. I hate what I've done. To you, to us, to our family. Her fingers were knotted so tightly together, her knuckles had turned pale, as if she could squeeze answers out of them if she tried hard enough. How's Evan? She finally whispered, her voice trembling. Is he okay? He seems all right, I said, but I still worry about him. Have you told him anything? She asked cautiously. I shook my head. No. He just knows that Mommy and Daddy aren't living in the same house for now. I want to keep it that way, she said quickly. As long as I can. He doesn't need the truth, not unless it's really over. I phrased my response deliberately, watching for her reaction. Not unless it's final, I echoed. Her gaze latched onto those words. Final, she repeated softly. Derek, are you saying there's still a chance? That maybe we could fix this? Her lip trembled as she bit down, her eyes flickering between hope and fear. I let silence sit between us, heavy and unkind. I wanted her uncertain, even though I already knew my own answer. I honestly don't know, I said at last, exhaustion weighing down every syllable. What you did? It broke something in me, in us. Trust. God, I barely sleep. I just keep replaying it all in my head. That part at least wasn't for show. Tears rolled down her face again. I know, and I hate myself for it. I did this. I caused this. I studied her for a long moment before speaking again. Then tell me the truth. No more lies, no excuses. My tone hardened, bitterness seeping through. Why did you do it? What were you looking for that was worth destroying our marriage? She winced at my words. I never meant to ruin anything, she whispered, voice trembling. I was selfish, careless. At first it was just attention. You were always buried in work, in your gadgets, and I felt invisible, unwanted. Her breathing grew uneven as she continued. That's not an excuse, but it's why I let it happen. Dylan, he noticed me. He flirted. He made me feel alive again, new. And I should have stopped it. God, I should have. But I didn't. I was weak. How long? I asked, my tone flat, though I already knew the answer. How long did this last? She swallowed hard. About 6 months, since April. Something in me knew she was telling the truth this time. 6 months, I repeated, tasting the bitterness of it on my tongue. Half a year of lying straight to my face. Jesus, Aaron. The pain pushed through no matter how hard I tried to keep it contained. It was always there, simmering, burning. She cried quietly. I know, and it kills me, knowing I hurt you like this. There's nothing I can say to justify it. Her voice trembled as she added, but I never stopped loving you. As awful as it sounds, I wanted both. I wanted to keep you and have what he gave me too. A tear slipped from her chin and hit the table between us. My anger had dulled now, replaced with something heavier, resignation maybe. But you couldn't have both, I said softly. No one can. Eventually you have to choose, and you made your choice. She shook her head furiously. I never wanted to choose, she whispered. I wanted our family, and the way he made me feel. It was selfish, stupid, Immature. Her hands shook as she wiped at her face. I thought I could keep it separate. Thought you'd never know. I lied to myself. I've ruined everything. She sniffled, dragging her sleeve across her cheeks. I'm sorry. I keep saying it, but I mean it. If I could take it back, I would, in a second. I turned away, my jaw clenched, my voice low but steady. But you can't take it back, I said quietly. Neither of us can. We couldn't postpone it any longer. The moment had arrived. I drew in a measured breath, letting the weariness bleed into my tone. I have to do what's right for Evan and for myself, I said quietly, even if that doesn't mean including you anymore. Her head dipped in a fragile nod, tears carving silent tracks down her cheeks. I understand, she murmured, voice trembling. I hate this, she admitted, but I get it. The words faltered, caught in her throat. I don't want to lose you. Maybe I already have. Her honesty was sharp, raw, so unguarded it almost hurt to hear. For a fleeting heartbeat, instinct urged me to reach for her, to soothe the ache I'd once vowed to protect. But I stopped myself. That was no longer my role, and I couldn't allow myself to forget what she'd done. Instead, I offered her the only limbo I could. I haven't decided anything yet, I said carefully. I'm still trying to process all of it. My hand massaged at my temple, feigning the weight of impossible choices. If I'm honest, it doesn't look good for us. But I won't make any decisions today, or tomorrow. That wasn't true. The paperwork was already filed. But she didn't need that truth. Not yet. Her uncertainty kept me in control. Her voice was barely audible. That's fair. I know I'm hanging on by a thread. I gave a small shrug, offering neither comfort nor commitment. Hesitantly, she reached across the table, palm turned upward, silently pleading for contact. I stared at that familiar hand, the one I'd held countless times before. Now it felt foreign, belonging to someone I barely knew. I didn't take it. Her hand faltered, retreating to her lap as she folded in on herself. We talked for a while longer, or rather, she did most of the talking. She confessed she'd severed all ties with Dylan. She spoke of nausea, sleepless nights, regret so heavy it hollowed her out. She promised therapy, counseling, anything to salvage what remained. I listened without expression, nodding occasionally, betraying nothing. In truth, I'd already pieced together the puzzle. She had ended things with Dylan, but only because everything had imploded. She'd even resigned from her job days after I uncovered the affair, claiming she needed time to heal. I suspected it was just as much about avoiding the whispers at the office, and maybe somewhere deep down she feared I might expose her. She didn't know what I had planned. After 40 minutes, she looked wrung dry, her words spent. I ended it gently, thanking her for apologizing, telling her I'd think things over. When she met my gaze, there was a longing there I hadn't seen in years. Too little, too late. Still, I softened my features, gave a faint nod. Take care of yourself, I murmured. She asked if we could meet again, maybe with a counselor, maybe with our pastor. I sidestepped, telling her, we'll see, I need time. Not a yes, not a no, just enough to keep her grasping at hope. When we stood, she moved instinctively, half reaching for a hug. I stepped back. She froze mid-motion. Sorry, she whispered. I offered her a thin, almost weary smile. Goodbye, Erin. Bye, Derek, she breathed, fresh tears breaking loose. I walked away and didn't look back. In my car, I exhaled a long, unsteady breath. The meeting had drained me, but I'd done what I needed to. I'd left her with hope, while keeping every card I held concealed. She had no idea what Monday would bring. That night I worked in silence, meticulous and methodical. Envelopes addressed to HR and Laura Bennett were sealed and ready. The process server was scheduled for 9:30 a.m. sharp at Erin's workplace. Bank account secured, evidence locked in multiple safe locations. My parents had agreed to take Evan after school, shielding him from any public fallout. I checked everything twice, then a third time, like a general reviewing troops before battle. By the time Sunday night surrendered to silence, there was nothing left to do but wait. Sleep came restless, heavy with anticipation. Chapter 5, Strike 1, The Unveiling. Monday broke with an unnatural stillness, the kind of silence that hangs before a storm. I woke in the dim light of the motel room long before dawn. Sleep had been shallow at best. For the 100th time, I rehearsed the plan in my mind. Today, the facade would finally crack. Evan left for school from the motel, a temporary adventure, I'd called it. He chattered excitedly about a science project due later in the week, blissfully unaware of what the day would hold. I smiled and encouraged him, heart hammering beneath my calm exterior. This was for him, I reminded myself. Better a clean break than a family poisoned by secrets. By 9 o'clock, I was parked a block from Erin's office, exactly where I'd planned. I had no intention of her ever seeing me there. I lingered at a distance, choosing to observe rather than step in. The man Laura had arranged to handle it was experienced, steady, precise, utterly composed. His task was simple yet exacting: deliver the documents quietly, without spectacle, but with flawless accuracy. Right on time, 9:30 to the minute, I saw him arrive. A clean-cut figure, crisp shirt and tie, stepping out of a sedan and striding across the parking lot with purpose. In his hand was a narrow folder I knew all too well. Inside lay the divorce petition, the summons, and the attachments detailing her affair, restrained in tone, yet leaving no room for misunderstanding. The wording was cold, almost sterile. For approximately 6 months, the defendant maintained an extramarital relationship, during which shared marital funds were utilized to sustain said relationship. This conduct has led to the irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. Stripped of legal jargon, it meant simply this: she cheated, and she spent our money doing it. From where I stood, just beyond the glass doors of the lobby, I couldn't see the precise moment she received the papers. But minutes later, my phone buzzed, a single word from Laura. Served. The image flashed instantly in my mind. The process server asking for her by name, her cautious step forward, confusion twisting into shock as he extended the envelope and quietly said, "Ma'am, you've been served." Maybe a coworker or two saw it. In an office that small, whispers travel fast. I let out a long, controlled breath. Step 1, complete. She knew now. The marriage was ending, and on my terms. I could almost picture her response, color draining from her cheeks, retreating to the restroom to cry or gather herself. It wasn't pleasant to imagine, but the thought of that necklace, engraved, intimate, a gift from him, reignited my resolve. While she was still reeling, I moved forward with the next part of my plan. Strike 1 wasn't finished yet. I drove across town to her parents' house. When they opened the door, their faces wore tentative smiles, uncertain, polite, but uneasy. Erin must not have told them much, likely only that we were having some difficulties. Her mother, Claire, ushered me inside, worry clouding her expression. "Derek, you look exhausted," she said softly. "Have you eaten? Can I fix you something?" I shook my head and sank onto their couch, my voice barely above a whisper. "No, thank you. There's something serious I need to tell you." Her father, James, remained rigid in his recliner, brow furrowed. "Is Erin all right? Where is she?" "She's at work," I answered, my voice harsher than intended. "I needed to speak with you, without her here." They exchanged a glance. That look alone told me they understood. Whatever I was about to reveal would alter everything. I didn't circle around it. I told them plainly. I filed for divorce. Claire's hand flew to her mouth with a soft gasp. James's eyes widened, disbelief colliding with confusion. "Divorce? Derek, what's going on?" Their reaction hurt more than I expected. For a decade, these two had been like family. Hurting them felt almost as heavy as the betrayal itself. But there was no way around it. I forced the words out. "I found out Erin's been having an affair." Claire's eyes closed, her face crumpling as she whispered, "Oh my God." James's jaw tightened, his face reddening as anger and sorrow mixed. "How do you know?" he asked quietly, protective, though there was no real challenge in his tone. He knew I wouldn't accuse her without proof. Hands trembling, I slid several photographs from the folder I'd brought. I laid them on the coffee table. Erin with Dylan in a hotel bar, sitting too close, her hand resting on his knee. Another of them holding hands in a parking lot. I hadn't included the worst images, only enough to end any denial. Claire looked once and began to cry silently. James removed his glasses, pressing his palms into his eyes as if bracing himself against a blow. "That foolish girl," he muttered, voice breaking. "What has she done?" In low tones, I explained the essentials, that it had been going on for months, that I'd caught them, that I had tried to address it privately, but found no way forward I could live with. I spared them the ugliest pieces, but didn't dilute the truth. This was deliberate, sustained betrayal. "I hate telling you this," I said, meaning every word. "I know she's your daughter. I'm not trying to turn you against her, I just can't pretend anymore. You deserve to know what's really happening." Claire shifted closer and, to my surprise, wrapped her arms around me. She was crying openly now. "Oh, Derek," she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry this ever happened to you." Her voice quivered as she spoke. "You've always been like a son to us. I can't even find the right words." I rested my hand lightly on her arm, feeling my throat tighten. "Thank you," I murmured. "I'm sorry too. I never imagined it would end up like this." James, who was usually the picture of calm control, stood off to the side. His eyes were wet, his grief quickly hardening into something sharper, anger. I can't believe she'd do this," he muttered through clenched teeth. "It's nothing like her. Or at least, I thought it wasn't." Even as the words left him, I saw the flicker of doubt cross his face. He wasn't entirely certain anymore what she might be capable of. People always insist something is out of character, right up until the moment it isn't, I thought bitterly. "I think she does regret it," I said carefully, measuring my tone. "She apologized, or tried to, but it's already done. The papers are filed. I have to protect Evan and myself moving forward." At the mention of their grandson, Claire dabbed at her swollen eyes with a crumpled tissue. "Of course. How is Evan? Has he started to notice?" "Not much yet," I replied. "I've been doing everything I can to keep things normal for him, but eventually we'll have to say something. I won't lie to him, but I'll do my best to explain it so he doesn't feel like he has to choose sides." James nodded gravely. "You have our full support. Whatever you need from us. Don't think we're excusing her either. She's our daughter, yes, and we'll always love her. But we raised her better than this." His voice sharpened, revealing the anger boiling underneath. "I'll be having words with her. What she's done is unacceptable." Claire's expression twisted with conflict, maternal loyalty warring with her sense of right and wrong. Finally, she gave a small nod. "We've been urging her to handle the divorce properly. No fighting, no dragging it out. Whatever spares Evan the most pain." Her voice broke as fresh tears welled. "I can't believe this is even happening. I wish there were a way to fix it." I managed a faint, sorrowful smile. I wish that too. Seeing their devastation cut deep in a different way. Telling them the truth about Erin's betrayal had been the right thing to do, but I couldn't ignore that it had shattered two good people who had loved us both. Still, I reminded myself silently. Erin and Dylan had created this mess, not me. We stayed a few minutes longer, trading quiet reassurances, promises that I'd never keep Evan from them, that they'd always be part of his life, that we'd stay family even through this rupture. They swore nothing would change between us. It was comforting and unbearably sad. When I finally walked out to my car, Claire followed me to the porch, tissue still balled in her hand. She stood watching as I drove away, her face etched with heartbreak and worry. That was when it truly hit me, the collateral damage I hadn't considered. Erin's affair hadn't just destroyed our marriage, it had shattered the way her parents saw her. By noon Monday, the first stage of my plan was done. Erin had been served. Processing the shock was now her burden to bear. Our finances were under my control, and her parents, once her strongest allies, knew the truth. I imagined her at her desk at work, if she even stayed there after opening the envelope. Hands trembling, reading the cold reality, our life boiled down to a case number, 2025 Dr. Amizam Ren. The blunt declaration of her infidelity. The stark fact that half of our savings had already been moved. Soon, she'd log into the bank and see the rest. Frozen accounts, joint withdrawals needing both signatures, her name scrubbed from my credit cards. The moment she realized her financial freedom had vanished would hit like a hammer. I told myself I took no satisfaction in picturing her distress, but I felt no pity either. These were the natural consequences of her own actions, not cruelty, just reality. That afternoon, Erin called. Maybe she'd finally found the nerve to speak. I let it ring. Didn't answer. She left no voicemail. Minutes later, a text came through. "I got the papers. Can we please talk about this?" I ignored it. There was nothing left to say. Laura's advice had been clear. Silence was strategy now. Anything about the divorce would go through our lawyers, and emotionally, I had nothing left to give her anyway. Later that evening, after I picked Evan up from a playdate, I checked my email. There it was, a message from a local family attorney introducing themselves as Erin's counsel, requesting a meeting to discuss temporary arrangements. She'd moved quickly, I thought. No surprise there. After the shock of being served, hiring a lawyer was probably the first thing she did. I wasn't surprised. I'd been bracing for this moment. After sending the latest update to Laura, I left the logistics in her hands, knowing she'd manage the scheduling. Even from a distance, I could almost sense Erin unraveling, panic creeping in like a slow tide. My thoughts were blunt. Here we go. Somewhere, she was probably in chaos, calling a lawyer, scrambling through her bank accounts, discovering she'd already been removed from joint credit cards, reaching out to anyone who'd listen through tears. Later that night, lying in bed, the full weight of it all settled over me. A part of me, the quiet part I'd buried, grieved silently. It was the same part that still remembered sitting around her family's table during the holidays, laughing with friends during easy summer evenings, and feeling secure as a husband in what I thought was a solid home. In a single decisive act, I had torn all of that away, exposing the truth beneath the facade. I kept reminding myself I'd done the right thing. A house infested with termites will collapse sooner or later. Better to demolish it and start fresh than live inside a lie. Still, in the darkness, I let a few tears fall. Not for the marriage I ended, but for the one that had already died long before I served the papers. A death I hadn't recognized until now. Chapter 6. Strike 2. The shockwaves at work and home. If Monday had been Erin's personal earthquake, then Tuesday was the aftershock, this time shaking her professional life. By mid-morning, the envelope I'd anonymously sent to her company's HR director arrived, timed precisely to land on the desk just after 9. Inside was a short, pointed letter. 2 employees, Erin and Dylan, had engaged in inappropriate conduct on company property and during work hours. I included carefully chosen excerpts of their emails, references to hotel meetups, and dates of long lunches that lined up suspiciously with those encounters. The language was neutral, clinical, written as though from a concerned outsider reporting a policy breach and possible misuse of company resources. I didn't work there anymore, so I couldn't witness the fallout firsthand. But just before noon, I got a text from an old colleague of hers, someone who'd since moved to another firm but still kept in touch with the office gossip. "Something up with E. Heard she was crying and got sent home." I responded vaguely. "She's going through some stuff. Not sure about work details." But I knew exactly what had happened. HR had confronted her. My guess? They pulled her into a private meeting, laid the evidence on the table, and demanded an explanation. Maybe she admitted to it. Maybe she tried to spin it. Either way, it would have destroyed her composure. Being cornered at work, forced to face the affair while her career imploded, must have felt like the walls closing in. Word spread quickly. Whispers of marital problems, speculation she might take a leave of absence. Later that day, Laura forwarded me an email from Aaron's lawyer. Apparently, Aaron had told him she might be suspended pending an internal review. He was fishing for information, asking if I knew anything about her employment status and hinting at possible financial implications. We kept the reply short and neutral, acknowledged her situation might change, agreed to revisit finances later. Nebraska's no-fault divorce laws meant her job loss wouldn't directly affect the settlement. Still, losing her position would devastate her independence, though ironically, it could give her leverage if she sought alimony. But knowing Aaron's pride, I doubted she'd go down that road, not after everything that had happened. That evening, while I sat with Evan, helping him through his homework, my phone rang. It was James, Aaron's father. I stepped into another room and answered. His voice was heavy with exhaustion. "Derek, I just talked to Erin. She came here after she left work." I steadied myself. "How did it go?" A long sigh. "Not well. She's shattered. I'll be honest, I lit into her, demanded answers. Why she did it, how she could throw her life away like this. Things got heated. Claire had to calm me down. Erin just kept sobbing, saying she's sorry, that she's ruined everything with one horrible mistake. She told us you filed for divorce, and that she might lose her job too. She's a mess." I closed my eyes, picturing the scene. Erin hunched over her parents' kitchen table, face hidden in her hands, her mother and father staring at her with a mix of shock and disappointment. It couldn't have been easy for any of them. "I'm sorry it came to this," I said quietly, and I meant it, in a way. But she had brought this on herself. James grunted. "I know. I didn't hold back. Told her she made her bed and now she's got a lie in it. Probably harsher than I should have been, but I'm angry and hurt." "I understand," I said. "I feel the same. I'm just trying to focus on Evan." There was a pause. Then James said, "She asked if Evan could come by this week. She's too scared to ask you herself. I told her I'd bring it up. Would you be okay with that?" Of course we'd be there, but only for her sake, so she could see him. She was coming apart without him, unraveling from the distance. I didn't respond right away. Part of me recoiled at the thought of giving her comfort she no longer deserved, of letting her see the boy we were both silently clawing for. Yet another part of me, the father in me, knew Evan was suffering too. To him, none of this made sense. The sudden wall between him and his mom was punishment without explanation, and the longer we kept it up, the deeper it would scar him. "I'm not against it," I said at last, carefully. "He should see her. I hesitated, searching for words. "I don't want him soaking up the tension. If she can hold it together around him, then, yeah, a short visit's fine." James nodded over the phone. "She swore she'll behave, and for him," he said. "We'll be there the whole time. Maybe this weekend, meet at the park, an hour or two at most." "That's fine," I replied. "Just tell me when." When I hung up, my chest felt split open. The second strike against her was already set in motion, and it was doing exactly what it was meant to do. Her career dangled by a thread. Her name was unraveling as people pieced the truth together. And in court she was trapped, running out of angles, but hearing, through her father, how shattered she sounded. I had to dig up every wound she'd left me with just to hold my ground. I couldn't break, not now. Wednesday came, and so did the third strike. The last one, the most brutal yet. That morning, a certified letter was scheduled to land in the hands of Laura Bennett, Dylan's wife. I'd been tracking it obsessively. Over my first cup of coffee, I saw the update, out for delivery. In a few short hours, another life would implode. The thought twisted something inside me, but also steeled me. Dylan had to face what he'd done. And Laura? She deserved the truth, no matter how merciless it was. I spent that day working from the motel, or at least pretending to. My eyes kept flicking back to my phone. Any second, I expected the first wave of fallout, the dominoes beginning to fall. A little after 1, my phone lit up with a local number I didn't recognize. I already knew who it was. I answered, keeping my voice even. "Hello?" A woman's voice came through, trembling. "Hi, is this Derek, last name?" "Yes," I said cautiously. Who's speaking? A shaky breath on the other end. My name's Laura Bennett. You don't know me, but I think you sent me something. Even though I'd braced myself for this exact moment, my gut still clenched. I did, I admitted quietly. You're Dylan's wife, right? A bitter, broken laugh spilled out of her. I was yesterday. Today, I don't even know what I am. She sucked in a breath, barely holding it together. First, I need to ask, everything you sent me, it's real? You're absolutely sure? Her voice carried that desperate thread of hope I knew too well, the frantic wish that this was all some horrific mistake. My chest tightened. I'd clung to that same hope once. But I couldn't lie to her. I couldn't drag it out. It's real, I said softly. I'm so sorry. I thought long and hard about telling you, but I figured you had the right to know. I forced myself to sound calm, clinical, even though my own emotions threatened to spill. She sniffled, barely audible. Thank you for being honest. It's awful, but thank you. I confronted Dylan. He admitted it. Couldn't deny it. Not with those photos. There was a pause, and then her voice cracked. He's gone now. Or maybe I kicked him out. Either way, nothing makes sense anymore. I'm sorry, I told her again, and meant it. I know what it's like, when the ground just disappears under you. For a long moment, silence tied us together. Two strangers bound by the same betrayal. Finally, she asked, voice uncertain. Your wife, she's Erin? Yes. And you've already filed for divorce? Yes, I said quietly, a few days ago. I can't blame you, she whispered. I'll probably do the same with Dylan. Can I ask, this affair, was it only your wife? Or were there others I should know about? I feel like I never really knew him. As far as I know, it was just Erin, I told her. From what I've uncovered, it started in the spring. It wasn't much comfort, but at least it seemed contained. One betrayal, not a trail of them. Two families wrecked instead of more. She exhaled heavily, the sound drenched in exhaustion. Thank you for telling me. That was brave, I guess, or at least decent. Most people wouldn't have said anything. I almost didn't, I admitted. When I pictured myself standing where you are now, the answer was plain. I'd crave honesty too. No one should be left stumbling in the dark. Her voice sharpened, hardening with each word. Fine. Let them cling to each other now, to whatever scraps they still think count as love. I've already told Dylan he's not welcome back. My children will grow up knowing this mess is his fault, not mine. A harsh breath tore from her lungs, fury simmering just beneath the surface. He keeps begging me to forgive him, but truthfully, I want him to lose everything. That's exactly how he made me feel, like I had nothing left. I recognized it instantly, grief transforming into rage. I didn't fan the flames, but I didn't shield him either. For what it's worth, I said carefully, I doubt either of them walks away from this untouched. If anything, they won't. My only focus now is my son, making sure he's okay. Beyond that, whatever happens to them isn't my burden. Same here, she whispered. Maybe that makes us cruel. Fine. They brought this on themselves. We stayed on the phone a while longer. Two shattered spouses trading war stories. She asked how I'd uncovered it. I gave her the brief version, just enough to make the picture clear. She confessed there had been signs, Dylan's late-night meetings, charges she couldn't explain, the slow withdrawal of affection. We both repeated the same disbelief. How didn't we see it? How could we have been so blind? Reassuring one another that trusting your partner isn't a sin, betrayal is. By the time we were addressing each other by first names, Laura, she sounded steadier. If you ever need anything, I offered, updates, details, or just someone who understands, call me. She thanked me and extended the same. It felt strange yet grounding, finding solidarity in heartbreak with a stranger. When I ended the call, relief flickered faintly through me. I'd done right by her. Whatever storm Dylan was about to face on his side, it was no longer mine to shoulder. I didn't have to wait long to watch that storm break. That evening, after dropping Evan off for a sleepover, I pulled into the motel lot and froze. Dylan was there. He looked nothing like the smug man in the footage I'd seen of my own home. His hair was wild, shirt wrinkled, stubble shadowing his jaw. He hadn't slept. That much was obvious. As I stepped from the car toward the building, he moved toward me, face flushed with some volatile mix of rage and desperation. My pulse jumped. Part of me had expected this. Still, I braced myself. My hand slid into my pocket. I thumbed my phone screen and quietly hit record. A precaution I'd learned to take for moments exactly like this. "Dylan," I greeted, voice level, stopping several feet short of him. Dusk had fallen. Harsh parking lot lights cut jagged shadows across the asphalt between us. "You son of a bitch," he spat, voice low and trembling. "Wasn't wrecking your own marriage enough? You had to wreck mine too?" The audacity nearly made me laugh, as if I were the one who'd broken vows. "I think you managed that yourself," I shot back. "But yeah, I told her. She had a right to know." He stepped closer. The sharp tang of alcohol hit me. He'd been drinking. Perfect. What kind of person does that? His words slurred slightly. Sending those pictures to someone's wife? That's twisted. My anger flared, but I kept my tone even. "The kind of person who finds those pictures because you're sleeping with his wife, Dylan. Don't lecture me about cruelty. You and Aaron were cruel to us for months." He jabbed a finger toward me, his hand unsteady. "This was supposed to stay between us. You could have faced me like a man, but no. You went behind my back, got me suspended, turned my wife against me." "Underhanded," I snapped. "That's rich coming from you. We have nothing to settle man to man. My fight isn't with you. It's about protecting what's left of my family, and you're the one who destroyed that." A bitter laugh escaped him as he dragged a hand through his tangled hair. "Congratulations," he sneered. "You saved your family by burning it to the ground." "Erin's a disaster. They sent her home today. Suspension, maybe worse. Could even cost her the job, thanks to someone whispering in HR's ear. Wonder who that might have been." His glare cut into me like shards of glass. I met it with ice, unflinching. "Doesn't matter to me if she gets fired, or if you do. Every choice carries its own wreckage." "What? You thought the two of you could sneak around during office hours and nobody would notice? That you could juggle an affair and still keep your picture-perfect lives untouched? That's not how this game plays out. Sooner or later, everything unravels." "She was ending it," he spat, voice jagged with fury. "We were done after you found out. But you wanted blood." My jaw clenched hard. If he was hoping for mercy, he'd chosen the wrong audience. "Don't pin this on me. You built the bomb yourself, handed me the detonator." His stare flared hotter. For half a second, I thought he might actually swing. He lunged forward a step. "You destroyed me." His voice ricocheted off the empty parking lot. "Do you even get that?" "My kids. My boy cried on the phone, begged me to come home, and I couldn't. I'm stuck rotting in some cheap motel." He gestured around helplessly, only then realizing the cruel irony. I was holed up in the same kind of dump. "I didn't move an inch." "Our situations aren't the same, Dylan. I'm here because of what you and Aaron chose. You're here for the exact same reason. Cause and effect." He was shaking. Rage, guilt, whiskey, maybe all three braided together. "I loved her," he choked out, voice breaking. "Aaron, I did. I still do. Not that it matters now. We both lost everything." A bitter taste crawled up my throat. "Love, don't romanticize it. If that's the name you want to give it, take a good look at the wreckage it left behind. If you really cared, you wouldn't have set fire to both families." He started pacing, frantic, adrenaline spilling through every motion. "You'll get what you want. The divorce, the money, your moral high ground. What else is left? You want me to beg? Fine. Here it is. I'm sorry I touched your wife. I'm sorry I lied to mine. I'm sorry we're standing in this ruin at all." The words ripped out of him, hanging in the night air like smoke. I let silence settle, heavy and sharp. His breathing came rough and ragged, like a bull that had charged and missed. Quietly, I said, "I never asked for an apology. Never asked for anything. All I wanted was the lies to end, and now they have." Something in him sagged. The fight drained away, leaving only exhaustion. In the dim light, I caught the wet sheen in his eyes. "You think you've won, don't you?" he rasped, voice raw. "Think this is victory? I shook my head slowly. There's no winning here. Not me, not you, not Aaron, not Laura. The only ones innocent in all this are our kids, and they're the ones bleeding for it. The difference is, I'll pick up the pieces for my child. I'll try to build something decent out of what's left. What about you? For a moment he just looked hollow, lost, then twisted his face into a sneer to cover it. Maybe I'll pick up what's left with Aaron. Ever think of that? Maybe we'll be together now out in the open, since you and my wife are so eager to throw us away. The jab landed hard. A flicker of pain knifed through me. The thought of them flaunting it, maybe even around my son someday. But I steadied myself. That fantasy would rot under reality's weight soon enough. If that's where it goes, so be it, I said flatly. It won't change my course. And honestly, if you two cling to each other in the ashes, it won't be some fairy tale you're picturing. It'll just be two wounded people drowning in regret. He had no reply. Just stared at me, hollow, emptied out. For a heartbeat, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He looked so small, so beaten, a man completely broken under the weight of the choices he'd made. Still, I couldn't silence the echo of Laura Bennett's voice, raw, trembling with anguish. I saw again the tears cutting trails down my mother-in-law's face. And I remembered my son's vacant stare, the confusion in his eyes as I explained that Mommy and Daddy wouldn't be living together anymore. I hardened myself. Dylan gave a subtle nod, like he'd finally rendered a verdict within himself. All right, Derek, he murmured, voice low. You've said everything there is to say, every last bit of it. Dragging his hands over his face, he exhaled, a sound more resignation than breath. I'm finished, he muttered flatly. With this talk, with all of it. Have your lawyer send over the paperwork. I'll sign. After that, I'll try to salvage whatever scraps I can from what's left of my life. He started to turn away, but hesitated mid-step, glancing back at me with an emptiness in his eyes so stark it made me flinch. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I really am sorry. Not that it changes anything. Something in the way he said it, maybe the sag in his shoulders, maybe the faint quiver when he uttered sorry, rang true. Against my instincts, I gave him a small nod. I know, I said softly, and I meant it. He was sorry, mostly for himself perhaps, but maybe a fraction of it extended toward me too. It didn't erase the wreckage, but it was better than denial, better than arrogance. He lingered for one last heartbeat, as though searching for words he would never manage to speak. Then, shoving his hands deep into his pockets, he muttered, Take care, Derek, and trudged off into the night until the darkness swallowed him whole. I stood frozen in the silence that followed, adrenaline ebbing away. My hands trembled now that the storm had passed. I hadn't realized until that moment how close I'd been to bracing for a fight. The recorder on my phone was still active. I saved the file, not because I thought I'd need it, but because it felt safer that way. You can never be too careful. It was over. Finally, over. The truth had come out for everyone who needed to know, spouses, family, colleagues. The intricate facade Dylan and Aaron had built was demolished beyond repair. In its ruins lay heartbreak and chaos, and perhaps someday the faint possibility of healing. I closed my eyes and tilted my head toward the star-flecked sky. The faint glow of the motel blurred the edges of the dark. For the first time in what felt like forever, I drew a deep breath without choking on secrets. The sorrow lingered, heavy, immovable, but beneath it was something new, a quiet, grim satisfaction, a fragment of justice, however flawed. My thoughts wandered to Erin. Did she know Dylan had come to me? Or was she curled up at her parents' house, crying herself to sleep? Did she hate me now, or hate herself more? Probably both. To my surprise, I felt no triumph, no vindication, just release. I had sought only one thing, consequences, for them to face what they had done, and they had. Along the way, I'd accepted that apologies were hollow and explanations would never untangle the mess. And that was okay. I hadn't done this for an apology. I'd done it for me, to prove I wouldn't simply roll over and let them walk away untouched. to know I had fought back, to move forward without regret. Strike three had landed. The final ruin was here. Dylan's marriage lay in pieces, his career likely tarnished beyond repair, and Erin, left amid the wreckage, her job uncertain, her reputation shattered, her family disappointed, her lover gone. No reconciliation with me, no future with Dylan either. Only hardship awaited her now. What came next was only aftermath, the long, grueling task of rebuilding. Chapter 7, Final Ruin. The days that followed that confrontation felt unnervingly still. A strange quiet settled over everyone involved, a kind of emotional fallout. With the worst of the blasts behind us, we retreated into our separate corners, tending wounds and surveying the wreckage. That Thursday, an email arrived from Erin's attorney. It was brief, clinical, confirmation of her agreement to an uncontested divorce and a list of proposed dates for a settlement meeting. By that point, it was little more than procedure. She had no strength left to fight. That same day, an HR contact quietly confirmed what I already suspected. Both Erin and Dylan had resigned. The official announcement framed it as personal reasons, but everyone knew better. The company had allowed them to leave quietly, sparing them the spectacle of being terminated for violating policy. Regardless of the wording, their careers there were finished. Erin's departure from our home was inevitable too. With no income and no desire to remain in a town where every glance carried judgment, she gave notice on the house. The deed had once carried both our names, but as part of the divorce, I refinanced it into mine alone. With my consent, she came by that Friday with her parents to collect the last of her clothes and personal items. I intentionally made plans to be out with Evan at the movies during her visit, partly to avoid a tense goodbye, and partly so my son wouldn't have to watch his mother carry boxes out of the house he'd always known. When we returned that evening, the quiet inside felt strange, heavier in some ways, yet oddly lighter at the same time. She'd taken far less than I anticipated. Only the basics she needed for her new place and a few sentimental keepsakes were gone. Most of the furniture and household things remained, either because she didn't have the space for them or couldn't bring herself to take them. That was fine with me. I could rearrange or replace whatever I wanted. Her parents later mentioned that Erin was staying with them temporarily until she finalized a lease on a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. Claire confided to me that Erin spent most days either asleep or in tears, unmistakable signs of a deep depression. I listened politely when Claire shared these updates, but I refused to let them weaken my resolve. I understood guilt and self-pity were predictable after being caught. Depression often followed exposure. For Erin's sake, and for Evan's, I hoped she would eventually get therapy or find the strength to climb out of that hole. But that responsibility no longer belonged to me. By the weekend, word spread that Dylan had left town. A mutual acquaintance mentioned he was staying with family in another state, which, to me, sounded like code for running away in shame. I doubted he'd be back anytime soon. Laura, his wife, and I exchanged one final email, strictly about logistics. She had filed her own petition and might eventually need me to confirm details of the affair through an affidavit. I agreed to help if necessary. In that message, she thanked me one last time. I remember wrapping myself in a blanket that night, cradling a mug of tea as steam curled into the darkness. I had told Dylan countless times that there were no winners in situations like this, and I had to remind myself of that truth too. Yes, technically I had won. I'd secured nearly every advantage in the divorce. I had exposed the betrayal. I had kept my dignity. But the fact that it had been a battle at all felt like a loss in its own right. That night my thoughts drifted toward forgiveness. Not because they deserved it, far from it, but because my therapist had brought up the idea during our last session. Forgiveness is less for them, more for freeing yourself, he had said gently. At the time, I'd rejected the notion. I told him flatly I couldn't imagine forgiving them. Not now, not ever. He didn't argue. He only said that if forgiveness ever came, it would come in my own time. Sitting alone beneath that silent night sky, I whispered the word to myself. Forgive. It still felt foreign on my tongue. Maybe acceptance was closer to what I was reaching for. Accepting that this was my life now. Accepting that my marriage was over. Accepting that Erin had shattered something sacred. And perhaps that I'd broken something in her, though others might say she had done that to herself. Accepting that everything had unfolded exactly as it had. I wondered if real forgiveness, the kind that strips away anger, might follow naturally once acceptance took root. Even then, I felt no regret for the choices I'd made. Others might have handled it differently, quietly divorced, kept the affair a secret to avoid humiliation. But I knew that would have left me seething with silent resentment, forever tormented by what-ifs. By exposing the truth, I had scorched the ground, but I had also cleared it. No illusions remained. Painful as it was, at least now everyone had the chance to heal honestly. I sipped my tea again and made a quiet mental note to tell my therapist I might be ready, someday, to revisit the idea of forgiveness. Evan's cry pulled me from my thoughts. He'd woken from a nightmare. I spent the next hour holding him, letting him curl up beside me in bed, something I rarely allowed before, but exceptions were necessary when a child's entire world had been upended. He didn't know the whole story, but he sensed enough to feel shaken. I held him close, rubbed his back until his breathing slowed, and whispered a promise into his hair. I'm not going anywhere. Chapter 7. Rebuilding from the Ashes. 2 months later, autumn's first cool winds swept through the yard that had once been our sanctuary. The young oak in the back, the one Erin and I planted on our first anniversary, stirred in the breeze, its leaves half turned to gold. It had grown taller since that hopeful day years ago. Now I stood beside it with Evan, watching him tip a watering can toward its roots. Easy, buddy, I murmured. Not too much. He giggled, tilting the can back as water splashed onto his shoes. The late afternoon sun drenched everything in warm light, the sky a flawless blue. The scene looked peaceful, deceptively so, given everything we had endured. Yet in that instant, I felt a fragile sense of calm. The past weeks had been consumed by paperwork, changes, and tentative steps toward healing. The divorce moved faster than I'd expected. Erin, likely following the counsel of her parents and lawyer, didn't contest the terms. By early October, everything was signed. I kept the house, the home we'd built over 10 years, and primary custody of Evan. We agreed to sell the unused vacation lot and split the modest proceeds. She waived any claim to my retirement accounts, in exchange for me not pursuing repayment for the money she had spent during the affair. The subject of alimony never made it past the starting line. Erin refused it outright, saying she couldn't, in good conscience, accept money from me, not after everything that had transpired. Part of me questioned whether it was really about principle or simply her unwillingness to keep any thread connecting us. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was both. Either way, that chapter closed almost immediately, without bitterness or bargaining. On a brisk Friday morning, we stood side by side before a judge. A few formal statements, a handful of questions answered, and just like that, our marriage was pronounced over. Ours was one of the quieter hearings that day. No raised voices, no desperate last-minute appeals. There was simply nothing left to argue. Erin wore a plain black dress, her gaze mostly fixed on her lap. I stood in a suit and tie, voice steady as I affirmed to the judge that reconciliation was impossible. When the dissolution was announced, I heard Erin's quiet sobs. I didn't turn. I stared forward, signed the documents handed to me, and never faltered. Outside the courtroom, we spoke only enough to arrange Evan's care schedule. She whispered a thank you, shaky but genuine, surprised perhaps that I hadn't dragged her into a bitter trial, and grateful she'd still have time with our son. I nodded once. There was nothing more to add. The war was over. We were two exhausted soldiers leaving behind a battlefield where love had long since died. By agreement, I stayed in the house. For a time, I considered selling it. Too many memories lurking in the corners, too many echoes in the hallways. But after sitting with a therapist, yes, I finally sought help, I decided not to flee. Instead, I would reclaim it. For Evan. For myself. The master bedroom became the first project. One weekend, my dad and I painted the walls, covering every reminder of what used to be. I bought a new bed, something untouched by history, free from the weight of what came before. I rearranged furniture, boxed up the wedding photo that once hung in the living room, and replaced it with a collage of recent pictures of Evan and me. Pumpkin patches, soccer wins, messy pancake mornings. Slowly, the house began to change, and in that change, oddly enough, I found comfort. It was no longer our house. It was ours, Evan's and mine. Erin moved to a modest apartment on the other side of town. Her career gone, her reputation in tatters, she needed a fresh start. She's been doing some freelance bookkeeping and mentioned possibly relocating to Lincoln after the new year for work. If that happens, we'll figure out what it means for Evan, but I doubt she'll go far. She wouldn't uproot him more than necessary. Our interactions now are polite but restrained. She visits once or twice a week to take Evan to the park or have dinner with her parents. I make myself scarce during those visits. She honors the boundaries we've set. Sometimes, during drop-offs or pickups, I catch sight of her. She looks muted. Not the fiery woman I once married, not the wreck I saw 2 months ago, just someone quietly trying to rebuild herself. The anger is gone. What remains is a soft sadness and a profound relief that I no longer revolve around her chaos. As for Dylan, word is he sold his house and left Nebraska City. Apparently he's living with his brother in Kansas, looking for work. His wife Laura filed for divorce almost immediately. A couple of weeks back, she sent me a brief email to let me know. We haven't spoken since that one phone call, but there was an odd comfort in knowing she's healing too. She kept the family home, raising her kids there, and thanked me again for telling her the truth. I wished her well, genuinely. She deserved better than what she endured. In another lifetime, maybe she and I could have been friends. But this isn't that lifetime. The crisis is over now. We'll drift apart, each of us tending to our separate recoveries. And that's okay. Not every bond forged in fire belongs in the quiet that follows. Daddy, should we put the mulch down now? Evan's voice snaps me back to the present. He looks up at me, eyes bright, blissfully unaware of so much, yet somehow resilient beyond his years. Yeah, buddy, I say, smiling. Grab the bag from the porch. He darts off and I pause for a moment, taking in the yard. Autumn in Nebraska paints everything in gold and deep red. The air carries the scent of crisp leaves and cooling earth. It's beautiful. And for the first time in what feels like forever, I see it. When you're buried in pain, the world fades to gray. But today, the colors are vivid again. Proof that seasons turn, that endings open space for beginnings. Evan drags the mulch bag over, and together we spread it around the young oak tree we planted last spring. Will the tree get new leaves when these ones fall off? He asks, patting the mulch with his small hands. Absolutely, I reply. It'll look bare for a while, but come spring, new leaves always grow. He nods, satisfied. When we finish, he wraps his arms around the slim trunk. I love our tree, he says. I swallow, my throat tightening with emotion. The tree, planted long ago in earth brimming with hope and promises we couldn't uphold, still stands tall. Its meaning has shifted over the years. It no longer serves solely as a monument to a marriage. Now it embodies endurance, quiet resilience, the unspoken strength of our small family of two. I reach out and ruffle Evan's hair. I love it too, I tell him softly. It's strong, just like us. His grin bursts across his face, pure, unguarded, and cuts through the weight I so often carry. In that effortless smile, I find the reason I need to keep moving forward, to keep piecing together something worth living for. As dusk deepens, we gather our tools and head inside. In the kitchen, I start dinner, spaghetti and meatballs. Simple, comforting, one of Evan's favorites. He sits at the table, chattering about school, about a new friend who's into coding. Lately, he's been exploring a beginner-friendly programming app I showed him. Maybe he's inherited his dad's love for tech. I listen, respond, ask questions of my own. My chest swells with pride. He's thriving in ways I once feared he never would. Of course, not every day feels this smooth, far from it. There are nights when I jolt awake, lungs burning, haunted by memories I wish I could erase. Nights when the empty side of the bed feels like a canyon I can't cross. And there are moments when Evan cries for his mom, or asks why we can't live together anymore. Answering those questions demands careful honesty, enough truth to honor him, enough reassurance to help him feel safe. I know the hard parts aren't over. There will be hurdles in co-parenting, in figuring out how to trust again if I ever even consider dating, which right now I don't. There are flashes of anger that still surface, sharp and sudden, like an old scar aching when the weather shifts. Healing is happening, yes, but healing rarely moves in a straight line. What steadies me is knowing I'm not doing this alone. I have Evan who needs me to stay whole. I have my parents. And, unexpectedly, Claire and James, Erin's parents, who check on me weekly, as though I'm still their son. They've apologized countless times for her choices, until I finally told them to stop. That weight was never theirs to carry. Now our focus is on making sure Evan feels loved by every grandparent in his life. Support has surfaced in other places, too. Megan and a few close friends who pieced together the truth have stood by me without hesitation. They even dragged me to their weekly poker night, pulling me out of isolation when all I wanted was to disappear. Therapy has been another anchor, helping me untangle betrayal, examine my own patterns, learn what healthy boundaries look like. It's guiding me toward forgiveness, not necessarily for Erin and Dylan, though maybe someday, but forgiveness for myself, for missing the warning signs, for not saving what was never truly mine to save. I'm learning that no one person can hold up an entire marriage on their own. Later that night after dinner, as I tuck Evan in, he mumbles through half-closed eyes, "Are you happy, Daddy?" The question freezes me in place. I smooth the blanket around him, take a slow breath, and think. "I'm getting there," I whisper, "because I have you, and every day it gets a little better." He nods, satisfied, yawns, and hugs his stuffed dinosaur close. Within minutes, he's asleep, safe, at peace. I linger at his doorway after turning off the light. His question echoes in my mind, "Are you happy?" For a long time, I wouldn't have known how to respond. But tonight, stepping onto the porch with a warm mug of tea, I glance at the silhouette of that small oak tree in the soft light and feel something close to peace. Not joy, not yet, but peace. It's the quiet realization that the worst is behind me, that I made it through. More than that, I stood tall, for myself, for my son, for the truth. I didn't shy away from the pain, and I didn't let bitterness consume me. I faced it head on, set boundaries, not from blind anger, though anger had its moments, but from a need for closure and justice. In the still night, I allow myself a faint smile. Victorious? No, that doesn't feel right. Life isn't about winning. It's about enduring, shaping, continuing. Too much was lost to call this a win. But I reclaimed something greater, my dignity, my self-respect, control over the path ahead. I protected what matters most, my son and the integrity I refused to let go of. Above me, stars blink between drifting clouds. I inhale the crisp night air, letting it settle deep in my lungs. The future remains unwritten. Good days, bad days, unexpected turns await. Rebuilding will come slowly, brick by brick. Trust, hope, and maybe, someday, love in a new form. I know I'm not the man I once was. I'm stronger now, wiser. And my capacity for love, for goodness, hasn't vanished. It's been tempered, refined. Are you happy? The words drift back to me on the wind. And into the autumn night, I whisper, almost believing it. I will be. Soon enough, I will be. With the soft rustle of oak leaves overhead, I step back inside, into the warm glow of home, ready to face whatever tomorrow brings.